And we are now recording.
Hi, Dion. I can see you. Can you see me?
Michelle, I can, and
Great.
we're streaming live and we are now recording.
Great. Okay. Let's go ahead and do the welcome and roll call, and then we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Laura, do you mind doing the roll call? I guess the welcome would be welcome, everyone. Let me start over. Shifting gears, I'm sure everyone spent their morning doing other things other than the commission. So we'll shift gears into the June 11th, June 2020 virtual Colorado Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting. Very unfortunate that we can't be in person, but certainly glad to see everyone's face on Zoom, and glad that people are healthy and safe, certainly safer at home. I think it looks like I'm getting names. I'm just getting my screen and all my stuff situated here. So it looks like I'm seeing commissioners and names and everything pop up. So I think that's looking all good on my end. Laura, if you are on, do you want to go ahead and call the roll?
Yes.
Thank you.
Adams.
Present.
Blecka.
Present.
Bray.
Here.
Garcia.
You betcha.
Haskett.
Here.
Hauser.
Laura, just admitting her now, so just a moment.
Okay. Okay. Hauser.
Yes.
Just doing roll call. McDaniel.
Present.
Schaefer.
Present.
Marty.
Present.
Vigil. Don't see him yet. Chair Zimmerman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. Thanks, Laura. Thanks everyone for being here. Let's go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Laura, if you can just do a flag, I think we'll just go ahead and just say the Pledge of Allegiance as if we were all in the room together and there was a flag. So Laura, if you don't mind pulling up that screen. Is that
One
possible?
second. One
Okay.
second here. Yep. Sorry
No
about that.
worries. I'm in the same boat trying to get all my everything, like I said, my gears into commission meeting zone, so no problem at all. Okay. You can be on mute or off mute, whatever you'd like to do. Oh, where'd it go? There it is. All right, on mute, off mute, whatever you'd like to do. I pledge of allegiance to the flag
Flag
United
of the United States of America
Republic,
and to the republic for which it
which it
stands,
stands,
One
one nation,
under God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
Great, thank you, Laura. We'll go right into the agenda and approve minutes. There was Laura did have a correction regarding attendance on the minutes, so you should have the latest version of that, not linked necessarily on the agenda, but certainly I think on the latest download. Is that correct, Laura?
Correct.
Great. And so is there a motion, do I have a motion to approve the April 30th and May 6th and 7th, 2020 virtual Parks and Wildlife Commission meeting minutes?
So moved. Marvin.
Great, thanks.
Schaefer.
Sounds like McDaniel and Schaefer. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Great. So agenda item 3, any corrections to the agenda or removal of consent agenda topics?
I would like to ask that we remove the naming of Fisher's Peak.
Where's my pen? Okay. We'll pull, thanks Commissioner Haskett. We'll pull that for discussion. And I think we'll talk about that at agenda item 22 when we talk about the consent agenda. We'll pull that and discuss that at that time. Is that all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Great, okay. I have that in my notes to discuss at 22. Okay, great. Any other corrections or consent removal? Okay, we will go to agenda item 4. So I'm going to take a little bit of prerogative here and adjust the way we typically do, you know, the regular kind of around the horn commissioner updates. So we're going to have a little longer agenda item 4 commissioner update than usual. And that's because, as most of you, I think everyone probably already knows, Commissioners Bray, Commissioner Vigil, and myself are all term limited at the end of this month. So we are going to be, we're going to carve out some time at the end of this agenda item so the three of us can each kind of make a few additional parting comments, parting words. You know, of course, if for any reason the governor's office doesn't replace us by July, I think we would probably all be happy to serve until replaced, but I assume that those appointments we'll hear of those appointments here very soon. So I'm going to manage this agenda item a little bit differently. So I'm going to first hand the mic over to Director Gibbs and Director Prenzlau. They both want to make a couple of initial statements. Then I'm going to make a couple of housekeeping statements. We'll go around the room, I'm still picturing us in a room, and do commissioner updates. And then Bray and Vigil and I will do our comments. Then we do have a public comment, and we'll make sure we have time for other commissioners to make comments after that as well. So just wanted to kind of give you the lay of the land and set up the pathway so you know what we're doing here. So I'll hand it over to Director Prenzlau or Director Gibbs, if I'm not sure who would like to go first.
Director Prenzlau, why don't you go first? I'll go after you.
That'd be great. Thanks. Thanks, Director Gibb, Chair, Madam Chair, Commissioners. Welcome to June meeting and appreciate everybody's attendance. Staff also, a beautiful June day. So want to spend a couple minutes and laying some groundwork. So we are in historic times. We've just finished all of this, the Pledge of Allegiance. A portion of it jumped out at me today in a special way. And I'm just going to reiterate a couple pieces of that. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to spend a second about liberty and justice. In liberty, we're all frazzled by COVID, stay-at-home orders, loss of liberties, economic loss, not the least of which human health concerns, and loss of life. We've been in a fight to keep the agency whole, to keep our facilities open, to provide services, not unemploy staff, and to help dig out of a $3.3 billion state deficit. On justice, justice for all. My heart is burdened by the events and the impacts of the last couple.
Dan, you just,
Dan, you muted yourself.
Thank you. I don't know how I
we
did
lost,
that.
we lost you at justice.
Okay, justice for all. My heart is burdened by the events and the impacts of the last couple of weeks, a ripping of the social and moral fabric. It is and should challenge us to look at the world around us through clearer eyes. All citizens of our state and are our clients, and they deserve to be treated with respect, dignity, and affection. As an officer of the law, I'm saddened by the action or the lack of actions in Minnesota. They lost the protect and serve mission. I'm also saddened that some incite violence and vandalism, which creates other tensions around the country. We are all better than that. As Director of Natural Resource Agency, I am charged with managing the habitat and the wildlife and the people for an outlet, an escape, a place to physically and mentally recharge. And we as the staff of Colorado Parks and Wildlife embrace that role wholeheartedly. I'm extremely proud of our whole agency through this time, but want to especially point out our 350 officers. We hire biologists and recreation managers, and then we train them to be natural resource professionals. That a portion of their jobs is law enforcement. We train them in community policing and de-escalation and apply enforcement to change behavior, not as punishment. We make over 3.5 million contacts a year, and most of those are customer service contacts. I'm proud of that fact. Finally, as Director of Colorado Parks and Wildlife, I have and will strive to help shape the future of this agency that continues to uphold our extremely high standards and continue to make sure Colorado is a place everyone feels safe and welcome. Not only are we managing TS, but let's work on loving our neighbor as much as ourselves. Thanks for the time, Chairwoman Zimmerman, and I believe Executive Director would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Director Prenzo. Director Gibbs.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Director Prenzo, for your words. I have updates on COVID-19. I have updates on the Department of Natural Resources. But, right now with what we're dealing with in the United States, I really feel like that pales in comparison of what we need to talk about. And I just want to say, as a privileged white male, that I'll never know what it's like that I shouldn't stay outside late at night. I'll never know what it's like to not touch anything in a store without buying it. I will never know what it's like that I shouldn't put my hands in my pocket. I'll never know what it's like to not leave a store without having a receipt with me. I just don't know what that's like. The situation of race relations, the injustice in America has really hit home for me, and I know for many of you. I decided to have an emergency meeting last Tuesday, and really appreciate, we had about 570 or so DNR employees participate. And I really, really appreciate those that participated. I'm really proud of the fact that, within the DNR, we do have an equity, diversity, and inclusion program, but frankly, that pales in comparison of basic human rights that we have before us right now. So I don't have all the answers. I know that it's a priority for me and the DNR to work on EDI goals, but also look at doing things differently. We want to set the tone in state government. So there's a commitment for me to work on action. I do want feedback, and I'm seeking opinions and ideas from staff. After that meeting, I can't tell you how many people, not only Parks and Wildlife, but Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety, Water Conservation Board, you know, the whole organization, many people reached out, and my conversations with people have been very powerful, to say the least. As I mentioned, I do have a lot to learn, but really want to look at ways that we can share resources and information as we move forward, and just recognize, you know, I think CPW is just an amazing organization, and the DNR is just amazing. And as Director Prinsloo mentioned, we are blessed to have, you know, about 350 people in law enforcement that every day they put their badge on, you know, they're risking their lives. You know, you never know what situation they could be in, what person could be on America's Most Wanted, and they're, you know, checking their fishing license and someone can pull a gun, or, you know, you just never know. So I really appreciate all their amazing service. But I just want you all to know, as the head of the organization of the Department of Natural Resources, it's my priority to work together, to learn from you all, to look at what action steps we can work together on. And if you want to know more about COVID-19 and other issues, I'll be available later on. But you know, this is a time that we need to bring together, that we all need to share some love. And I want to provide that love to you all, and make myself available to have conversations that frankly are just not easy to have at all. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gibbs. I really appreciate that setting of that tone, and the willingness to be vulnerable, the willingness to recognize that it is a time to be comfortable being uncomfortable, knowing that we're going to do everything we can, and we might be walking with our shoelaces tied together, but we're still going to walk. So, you know, I really appreciate both Director Prinsloo and Director Gibbs. I really appreciate that sentiment, and carving out the time and space. I know that obviously we have a big agenda, we have work we need to get done. Director Gibbs, you are agenda item 5 right after this, so I'm sure we'll want to hear about DNR updates and whatnot as well. But there's time for, we're making time for that, but this is incredibly important to carve out time for this too. So thank you, I appreciate that. Like I mentioned, a couple quick housekeeping things, and then I do want to go for commissioner updates. So a couple of things, take note on your iPads. The habitat management plan, their presentations are pre-recorded. Our biologists pre-recorded them in videos. So if you go through, I think it's supplemental. If you can't find it, let me know, and I'll read the yes, thank you, herd management plans. And so if you go through mailing materials, and then there's a memo, and then there's links to the YouTube presentation. We're going to discuss those herd management plans. Thank you, Commissioner Garcia, tomorrow morning. So if you haven't had a chance to watch those presentations, please do so. If you need any help finding them on the iPad, obviously let me or Laura or someone know. Second is there's a couple other handouts in those supplemental mailing materials section of the navigation on the iPad. One is on the mobile app for the bear. It's called the Lean Team handout, I think. Yes, Bear and Lion Form Lean Team. So if you recall, we had, there it is, mailing materials, supplemental items. That's what it is. So if you recall last meeting, we talked about the Bear app that the staff were using. And so there's just a one-page handout that talks about that. And it's pretty great. I think it's going to be helpful. Any questions or discussion on that, we can, certainly do that. There's another handout that I want to bring attention to, CPW predation research updates. And so it just has an update of a couple of the ongoing studies we have in, of course, the Upper Arkansas and the Piceance Basin. So just want to bring everyone's attention to those items. So that's number 3. I also, I mean, I want to just again express my gratitude to leadership team, Director Prenslow and the staff for all of the, everyone being so adaptable during the coronavirus pandemic, and really appreciate everyone's respect and staying home. I know that I have visited a couple of state parks, and the park managers have been amazing. Everyone's wearing a mask, incredibly helpful. Our visitation, I know we're going to hear about, has been very different. And so I just want to commend the staff. And I know everyone on the commission wants to commend the staff for their adaptability there. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention, again, thanks Director Prenslow and Gibbs for your comments and recognition of of Black Lives Matter movement and what's going on right now. I also want to note that June is Pride Month. It's really important, obviously, to be carving out a specific time to recognize and validate those who identify as LGBTQ. It's an exciting time to remember and promote human rights right now, which are universal to everyone and apply to everyone, everywhere, anytime. I'm thrilled personally, the opportunity that's before us, and with the added current focus on current events and attention, the opportunities that we have together to dramatically improve our individual and collective efforts around inclusion and engagement. So just want to spread, as Director Gibbs says, spread some gratitude and some love. With that, I'll do Commissioner, I got to go to my participant mode so I can see hands. So I want to go to Commissioner updates and Commissioner Adams. I know you have your slides ready, so let's start with you because I think Laura has them ready to go.
Yes, hello.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that that welcome. And again, I would echo the comments about staff being able to really pivot regarding COVID, and look forward to our conversations around that and the response. I also wanted to take a moment to thank Dan Gibbs for his leadership and for that powerful Black Lives Matter solidarity letter, backed by action. You know, I've received a lot of solidarity letters, and I'm not seeing a lot of actions. And to know that this agency has already committed itself around these issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion is very exciting. And I have some wonderings around how we can continue to hold our commission and our leadership accountable towards meeting these DNR goals around the pipeline and diversifying the pipeline, around telling our history and the story of Colorado that's inclusive of all populations, cultures, and historical contributions, and more authentically engaging our community partners and stakeholders. I'm wondering if we need to identify any specific CPW goals that are in response to specific inequities that we are seeing in the data, and how we can support our stakeholders in holding us accountable for dismantling any inequities in policies, practices, and protocols. You know, this time has been challenging, but Black Birders Week, which was last week, was a response to something that was another tragic moment directed at the Black community in our country. Birder Christian Cooper, just birding in New York City, and was harassed. And in response, 30 Black scientists, scholars, and naturalists came together to form Black Birders Week. Outdoor Afro Colorado actually had an event with just a few folks, because again, COVID, so we were very responsible, but we also had a virtual event as well. And I have some insights that I learned there, and you can read at your leisure. I'll make sure that Laura has this and shares it, but I want to be mindful of time. And another call to action: how can we at CPW increase Black, Latino, Latinx, Asian, and Indigenous history at all of our state parks and programs? As we know, that beautiful Staunton State Park Visitor Center currently only includes settler or colonist history. How can we better engage our Black and BIPOC, so I won't have to say all of that, that's what BIPOC means if you ever wonder what that means, scientists, biologists, educators, and naturalists to inform our work, partner with us, and even join our team. Now, as a budding gardener, I understand how important soil is and how we have an opportunity to grow the most beautiful things out of rich soil, and we know what soil is made of. And so I echo Dan Prinslow's comments around liberty and justice for all. It's important that we we talk about the elephant in the room, racism, white dominant culture. You hear these terms. Again, I've committed my entire career, my whole life to these issues of justice, issues of liberty. This is a powerful graphic that I've seen going around with my colleagues at the American Institutes for Research and elsewhere. Oftentimes when you talk about, or we think about, or we see these issues, it tends to be at the top part of that bar around lynching or race jokes or slurs, which, by the way, I have experienced as a commissioner since in my short tenure. And then you have this stuff all around, all underneath. And so I ask again, how is CPW monitoring and dismantling? So as I look at the implementation plan, these are the wonderings that I have. How are we addressing systems that have resulted in overrepresentation and underrepresentation at the staffing and leadership levels? How are we strengthening and diversifying our career pipelines? How are issues of power, privilege, culturally responsive practice being addressed in leadership and staff trainings, as well as annual performance reviews? As a budding hunter, safety in the outdoors is becoming even more important to me. As you know, Christian Cooper, he just had binoculars. Imagine if I had a rifle in the field. I'm shaking because I'm afraid, and I'm a commissioner. And so I've had some really deep conversations with Heather Dugan. Her leadership has been tremendous. I've talked with her all year long around law enforcement and what she and her team has been doing to increase and build and strengthen the cultural and linguistic competence of our staff, to make sure that we are using the best strategies at play, and that we are building trust with the community that we are trying to serve. And as our community is diversifying, we need to understand that words have meaning. This term in particular, game warden, is one that is a divide. It is so unfortunate when I hear from wildlife managers how this term is so positive to them, how it is a tradition in many of their families and their lives. And I hate that I come to this space and sadly that term does not fill me with joy. It does not. It is a barrier. It is a barrier of entry. It is a barrier to a relationship. If you're asking Black, Brown, Indigenous, Latinos peoples to come in, we've been disproportionately impacted by the law enforcement. And so I offer us to really think about the words that we use and when we use them. And I'm actually hosting a virtual book club on the 2009 Pulitzer Prize winner, Slavery by Another Name, the re-enslavement of Black Americans from the Civil War to World War II. And so you have my email. I've got a folder all ready for anybody who would like to join me. And again, I want to extend an apology. And this hurts me because this happened twice and I did not know. And I should have known. And so I'm sitting here apologizing for John Wayne's voice being used for our Pledge of Allegiance twice. My grandfather loved Westerns. Some of my earliest memories are watching them with him. But it wasn't until 1990 in a song that I heard somebody say something negative. And I went and researched. And then I found this quote from John Wayne. I believe in white supremacy until Blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. And so when we have his voice in our meetings, others who share that sentiment hear it and think that we do too. That is not a message that we want to unintentionally give. And so I ask, what protocol, policy, and practices are being developed to ensure that CPW is not promoting white supremacy or white dominant culture or any racist undertones unintentionally? And lastly, I just want to follow up with Commissioner Zimmerman or Chair Zimmerman's comments about pride. This offers us an opportunity to dig more deeply. Again, words are nice, actions are better. And so I found out about queer ecology I never heard about. And so now I'm curious about that and I'll be diving in. So anybody else who knows about this or has an interest, please let me know. This is a growth area for me. The finger I point at you is 3 back at me. We are all on this journey together. Liberty and justice for all. And so I ask here, how does CPW engage with the LGBTQAI+ community? That refers to lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning, intersex, and asexual or alive. How is CPW supporting our LGBTQAI+ staff regarding pronouns, binary gender terms like sportsmen, if we're referring to everyone, and health insurance for those particularly trans, those who may be transitioning? I know the health insurance issues are challenging. So again, I'm just offering an invitation for us to explore these issues together. It's time for us to get specific. And I'm excited. I couldn't imagine a better commission to have this conversation with, staff to have this conversation with, and a tremendous leadership effort by Dan Gibbs, who is willing to very much fight the good fight for our humanity, for our land, and for our country. Thank you so much. And I leave us with this. If you have come here to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together. And very, very lastly, thank you, Michelle Zimmerman. Thank you, Commissioner Vigil. Thank you, Commissioner Bray. You have built such a strong organization, and we are well positioned to take on these new challenges. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm sorry I went long.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. It's an incredible message and thought-provoking questions. And those are exactly the kinds of questions that we need to think about as a group, as an agency, and as individuals every day. You made a lot of statements that, like you say, reflect back on me, that I use language and I don't even think twice about it. And it's an opportunity to start thinking about it and making forward progress, which is something this agency is all about. So thank you. I don't know who wants to try to follow that, but I'm sure we do have some additional comments around the room. Let's see if I have any hands. Let me get my participant window open. Oh, great. Good. Charles, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. I too have spent the last month dealing with all of the issues around the pandemic and Black Lives Matter. It's very strenuous. I spent the better part, almost 8 hours yesterday, listening to legislative hearings regarding racism and law enforcement, and it's troubling. And thank you, Commissioner Adams, for your presentation. I believe everybody takes what you said seriously. I do. And then I would like to move on to how I spent the rest of my month, which all is consumed by Zoom. But as I do that, so you don't have to see me, I've got a video that Laura's going to play in the background, as I promised, on update on my puppy. But while she's doing that, I would like to just talk about some of the things that I think are really important on Zoom that I have been following. Trout Unlimited has a lot of stuff on Zoom that they have been doing live streaming. Ducks Unlimited the same. But the ones that are closer to home, partners, the partnership conference, we all know we lost, but has been held virtually. And so I have been following some of the presentations from the Partners Conference on streaming, and they've been just fantastic. I also, night before last, I ended up, or last night, watching a Zoom presentation by Parks and Wildlife Aquatic Division for the Northwest, and extremely educational, wonderful materials. And then finally, there was a series of Zoom presentations. I don't know, Laura, if you can make that video go. You have to hit play. There it goes. There she goes. And so lastly there were a series of Zoom presentations put on by Parks and Wildlife around hunting tactics. And the very last one was on secondary draw. that is one of the best presentations I've ever seen. And I would suggest to Director Prenslow and your staff that that be something that be included in our orientation program for our new commissioners when we bring them on board this year. And also something that would be good for all of us as commissioners and for all of our consumers to watch. It is a great introduction to not just the secondary draw, but the entire system of how we draw hunting licenses. So thank you for all of those presentations that have been able to entertain us to some extent while we've been going through all of these different crises. Thank you.
Michelle?
I don't see her, so either Commissioner McDaniel or myself, any other commissioners have a something like to speak to in this intro? And we'll try and find Michelle. Commissioner Hauser.
Sure. Thanks. And it's hard when we can't see everyone. So I'll do my best here as well. I want to say thanks also to Director Gibbs for the framework. I had the benefit a little bit ago, as did Commissioner Garcia and a few others, of hearing some of that to the GOCO board as well. Also want to thank Director Prenslow and the entire CPW team for sustaining operations these past few months, for being nimble and creative in our approaches to serve the public during a pandemic. And I want to add my sincere appreciation to Commissioners Bray, Vigil, and Zimmerman for your service to our state as your terms come to a close. With my brief comments today, I just wanted to share a few nuggets from a presentation made by the White River National Forest Supervisor, and I asked for his permission to do this as it was contextual. He shared that Colorado's, I don't know if everybody knows this, but Colorado's White River National Forest is the most accessed public land access in the United States, with more visitors annually than the Grand Canyon, Yosemite, and Yellowstone National Parks combined. I didn't know that. And an estimated 85% of its visitors annually are white. With an operating and delivery systems that are designed, that were designed in the 1970s, culture and practice still largely align, with the white family driving to a campground, towing a camper, rather than reflecting the broader demographics, audiences, and socioeconomic spectrum of our country. And for decades, the people in leadership positions across the U.S. Forest Service have been white and male. Many are approaching retirement, and in full disclosure, in my day job, we are working to try to change that pipeline. So hopefully we will make some progress there. So during this presentation, I reflected on parallels to CPW in our work, and whether the result of conscious or unconscious decisions, the extent to which we as an agency lack alignment with the backgrounds, interests, and lived experiences of a broader set of stakeholders. Have we made progress as an agency to be more representative and inclusive? I would say yes, and a few examples today to celebrate. I want to say to Commissioner Adams, thank you for your comments today, for your bravery, and for being the first African-American woman appointed to this commission. You do not stand alone. To Heather Dugan for serving as the first woman to lead law enforcement for the Colorado Parks and Wildlife. The public safety role of our agency is as important as ever, and there is no better time to proactively examine how we train our officers and how we engage the public. To Kate Greenberg, I don't know whether she's with us today, for serving as Colorado's first female Commissioner of Agriculture. To Commissioner Zimmerman for serving as the first woman to chair this board since the merger. For a nearly gender balanced commission and the additional racial and ethnic diversity contributed by Commissioners Vigil, McDaniel, Garcia, and Vardy to our work and to our discussions. Do we have a long way to go? You bet. This includes further diversifying our workforce, our leadership team, and our commission, making professions across DNR more accessible, welcoming, and appealing to a broader group of applicants, providing extensive and ongoing cultural competency and implicit bias training for our staff and for our commission, for taking a fresh look at our entire range of delivery systems, language, signage, practices to make sure of their currency and relevance, and meaningfully engaging and listening to marginalized communities. The past few weeks have reminded us of the realities millions of Americans of color face daily, and most in present tense, Black Americans and Black Lives Matter. Racism on the sidelines or ignored until caught on a video that wakes us back up. We simply cannot go back to sleep or ignore this important inflection point as an agency, as a major employer in our state, and as a visible brand across our state. And we can also not let the state's budget crisis be an excuse to derail our progress. It is a profound moment. There is no better time than now. Let's not waste it. And CPW's collective future is ours to define. So I look forward to working together with all of you on this moving forward. And I'll turn it back to whomever is now chairing this meeting.
Did we lose Michelle? This is Marvin.
Marvin, Michelle texted that she had got kicked off and was trying to get back on, and it looks like she's on, but it doesn't look like she has, like she doesn't have her video or microphone on.
Oh, no problem. I will, thank you very much, Carrie. Any other commissioner comments? And I'll look to see if I'm watching via my phone here, any hands that are raised. If not, we can move forward to our updates.
Marvin, I know there was quite a bit planned. I'm not sure what Michelle's plan was, but I think we could move on to Dan Gibbs and then move back to Michelle afterwards, perhaps?
Yes, because I think that we wanted to have discussions or remarks by Chair Zimmerman, Robert, and Jim as well during this time. So that's why I was thinking we'd go forward to the update and then we could go back so that Michelle could start that.
Great, thank you.
Does that make sense for all? Okay, with that in mind, Dan Gibbs, Director Gibbs, are you still on the line, and would you like to give any other update with regards to DNR?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I will try to give a brief update, but first really want to thank the amazing service, the outgoing commissioners, Commissioner Zimmerman, Bray, and Vigil. Thank you so much for your amazing service for CPW and for the state of Colorado. The many hours that you've put in studying the packets, traveling around the state, working with stakeholders. Just thank you so much. You really have made a great impact on the organization. So thank you. I really appreciate it. I want to give just a brief update on COVID-19 and how the DNR is continuing to function, just like this meeting is continuing to happen, even though we're not able to meet in person. You know, we went originally with the governor's orders on the stay at home, and we were able to reach a really high percentage of social distancing of compliance. We think at about 80% compliance. So the numbers then kind of went down. And now we're at what's called the safer at home time frame, and we're hoping to achieve about 55% to 65% compliance of social distancing, because if we drop down into the 40s, it's very likely that we will overwhelm our healthcare system. And the governor obviously has a goal to not overwhelm the healthcare system, but also he really wants to make sure that we can have our schools functioning this fall. And so, you know, not overwhelming our healthcare system and making sure that our schools can open are two, you know, major priorities for him. Just want to give you just briefly a snapshot in terms of cases that we see. These are numbers from 4 p.m. yesterday. We currently have 28,499 cases, positive cases. We have 1,312 deaths due to COVID-19, 5,035 hospitalizations out of 227,000 completed tests. And in terms of new cases, 7 out of the last 14 days have a downward trend in the 7-day moving average of newly reported cases. And in terms of hospitalizations, 11 of the last 14 days have a downward trend in the 7-day moving average of new hospitalization rates. So those are really positive numbers I just wanted to share with you. I'll let Director Prinzel, focus on obviously updates for CPW and some of the land stuff. I'll maybe give you a brief update on oil and gas. Senate Bill 181, we are still working really hard to implement that bill and go through the rulemaking process as required in that bill that really overhauls, how we do oil and gas in the state of Colorado. So to date, we've passed 3 of the really important rulemakings that were listed out of the top 9 that's required. Just last night, we passed wellbore integrity. We have some of the, I would say, most positive regulations now to be protective of groundwater in the United States. And this is actually something that the oil and gas industry supported, as well as the conservation groups and many different stakeholders. So it was really amazing that we were able to find kind of the sweet spot. Not one person testified in opposition, which is just really unique. We've also passed administrative law judges to allow them, that was part of our 500 series rules, as well as flow lines. And then just like CPW, we have upcoming commissioners to appoint from the governor. There'll be 5 new professional commissioners, not that the current folks are not professionals, but these new oil and gas commissioners will be paid full-time, and they will be will likely come out with an announcement by next week on that. And then I just also want to recognize too, CPW, thank you, Director Prinzel, and all your staff. You have really done an amazing job to keep our state parks open during this really unique time where some of our surrounding states have not been able to do that. And, as a result, some of our surrounding states have announced, massive layoffs and really challenging budget situations. So, our state parks have been valuable resources for those seeking physical and mental health. And I know our numbers reflect that, throughout the state of Colorado. I've been lucky over the last few weekends to visit Steamboat Lake State Park, and as well as Sylvan Lake State Park. So thank you so much to the staff members there. You're all doing an amazing job, but thank you statewide. Just, I know you're seeing a lot of numbers and I know it's challenging, but just thank you for working hard to work with everyone. Our Fisher's Peak bill, really happy that that's moving along the process. I want to thank Director Prinzel for working hard on that bill, as well as Doug Vilsack and Alice Cosgrove, my new legislative liaison. Everyone's been working extremely hard on that. That's actually scheduled to be on third reading today, possibly later on today in the House. It's already passed the Senate, so that's really moving forward and really excited about that. You're all probably wondering about the new CPW commission seats. The governor has been conducting interviews. I've been a part of those and some I have not been, but I want to trust he's been interviewing really wonderful people, and he has not decided who will be selected yet, but I'm very confident that that will happen within the next couple weeks. So that's my update, and I'm happy to answer any questions or chat with anyone offline. Thank you.
Any questions or comments?
Thank you,
for
Director.
Director Gibbs? Oh, you're back on the line, Michelle.
I'm back. Sorry. I've been on, like Commissioner Garcia, I've been on Zoom meetings all week, haven't had an issue. I don't know why. Suddenly, the most important meeting of the week, I have internet issues. Apologies, everyone. So it sounds like, Commissioner McDaniel, did you guys move on to agenda item 5?
We did. We took a pause from the commissioner comments so that you could return before you, Commissioner Brain, Commissioner Vehil, would give your comments individually about your service to the commission. So we just moved forward so we could move back.
Great, thank you. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. I think you were asking if there were any questions or comments for Director Gibbs.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can chat with folks offline too. So, but thank you so much.
Great, thank you. And thank you for covering for me. Were there additional commissioner, back to agenda item 4, were there additional commissioner updates? Seeing none, Commissioner Bray or Commissioner Vehil, would one of you like to go first with some of your comments of the last 8 years? I think Commissioner Vehil did join. Ray, you want to go first?
You want me?
Yes, that'd be great.
Well, thank you. It is challenging times. There's no question about it. Commissioner Adams, I so appreciated your report and your commentary. And as I move forward throughout my life, I've learned a lot throughout the events of the last month or two regarding the incidences within our state and also nationally. And I do pledge to do my part. Upon reflection, I don't want long goodbyes. I've been on the commission a long time. My first commission appointment was in 2004 for just the Wildlife Commission at that point. And prior to that, for at least 10 years prior to that, I almost never missed a commission meeting. I participated in, there's 2 different Big Lap committees. I participated in the first one, the Wolf Working Group, vouchers and license allocations, all of those. I've really appreciated my time on the commission. The people I've met, the commissioners I've been with, the staff from top to bottom, I couldn't even begin to name all of them, so I won't. I've been fortunate enough to serve under 4 governors, 5 DNR directors, untold number of CPW directors. So I guess that tells that story. But when I first came on the commission, one of my proudest, which I would like to feel as an accomplishment, was when I first came on the commission, relationships between the ag community and landowner community and the agency wasn't as good as it should be. And it's much better now. And I would like to think that I played a part in that, bringing both sides together. So I thank everybody. It's been a hell of a ride. It's been a good one. So long for now.
Oh, everyone needs to unmute so we can hear everyone's clapping. Yeah.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Commissioner Bray. Does anyone want, oh, Brett Ackerman is giving us a clap in the hand raising. Does anyone want to make any comments, or should we go ahead and see if we can get Jim Vehil back on the line? I'm just scrolling to see. It looks like Commissioner Vehil is on. His name's here. Laura, do you know if he's on?
Yeah, I see him there. He's unmuted.
There you go. Commissioner Vehil, can you hear us? Director Prenzo, did you want to
Yeah, I can wait.
say something while we're getting Commissioner Vehil?
Obviously, I do have a comment about all 3 commissioners at the end, or I can do them separately while we're waiting for Commissioner Vehil. It's up to you. Sounds like he's coming on, so I'll take out till the end.
Great. Commissioner Vehil, nope, there you are. You're off mute. Go ahead. Maybe not. I keep seeing him going on and off mute. Jim, can you hear us?
Michelle,
see.
we'll ask him to dial back in. I think he's.
Okay,
got
I'll
connection.
my little comments and hopefully you guys can get him back in on a new line here after that. Fingers crossed. Thank you, Dion and Laura. Yeah, 8 years. It's pretty amazing. I'm definitely not ready. I'm not ready to leave the pang of it. I just got an interconnect connection unstable. Am I still, or am I frozen? Okay, thank you.
You're good.
Thanks, Dion. Just like Robert, just like you, there's no way I'd have to thank, 1,000 people. I think for me, big thanks goes to Director Prenslow, then Regional Manager Prenslow, served on the Habitat Stamp committee together. And Dan called me up one day as I was actually in the field and said, "Hey, do you want to be a Parks and Wildlife Commissioner?" And obviously, mission being on the Habitat Stamp committee, had been in meetings but didn't fully grasp what, how to pay attention, how to know what everything on the agenda meant, and all the responsibilities of a commissioner. Thank you for giving me the avenue for this opportunity, and it's been an absolute honor. I have learned and grown leaps and bounds thanks to staff and fellow commissioners. I mean, one of the other biggest thanks, of course, goes to you, Commissioner Bray, because my first year, I really in a situation making decisions on a sport or sports that I didn't really know much about. Hunting and participated. I was really the kind of conservation, recreation minded person and position, my role on the commission, my constituency and representation. And, I just felt if I had the opportunity, I wanted to take it, and having the opportunity to go experience hunting and experience what it's like to be in the field, and why people do these things and why it's that we do right on these regulations and regulating this sport. It was incredibly eye-opening for me, and I can't thank you and the support I received for that enough. It's really changed my life, and I think it made me a much I will say that I have felt my role on the commission or part has been to be a mile wide and an inch deep, and relying on the incredible biologists and scientists and the information that staff brings to us, pulling our decision-making decisions together and votes together from that has been experience, and I'm just very grateful to the staff. I will say that I believe that in my core, I believe that when Colorado Parks and Wildlife succeeds, when we succeed at our everyday work, when we succeed at our mission, every citizen and visitor to the state of Colorado benefits. Everyone benefits, even if you're not someone that and goes to the mountains or engages in state parks, recreation, or anything like that. You still benefit from the work and the success of CPW. The work this agency does ensures that we have nature, healthy habitat, trails, wildlife, rivers, healthy ecosystems. The list goes on and on. And I know for me, my safe place, my sanity is getting out into nature and experiencing those trails and that time in big wide open spaces. And it's the work of CPW that really allows us to have such healthy systems and trails. And it really allows me to have that sanity. I will say, I guess the main thing I want to pass on is that, you know, my MNC is about progress and is about moving forward. Colorado Parks and Wildlife, all Parks and Wildlife were created by a group of people who then wanted to change the status quo, to change how things were traditionally done. A group of people who said, hey, you know, we've just been hunting and fishing and we need to change this, regulate these activities. We need to make sure that we have the opportunity to hunt and fish well into the future. And so a basis to have our foundation in a group of people that wanted to push forward and make progress. It's just an incredible institution. And I think it positions us in a very good space to continue to be inclusive, to continue to answer the questions or address some of the questions that both Commissioner Adams and Commissioner Hauser posed. It's an honor to be a part of such a progressive agency. And I hope I can find ways to continue to be involved after the end of this month. So thank you to everyone. It's been a great honor.
Yay, thanks, Michelle.
Thanks, everyone. So I want to see if Commissioner Vigil can, oh, he's still trying to get on. And I do have a couple hands. Commissioner Garcia.
I just wanted to, we have a person who's joined us, Tim Monahan, and maybe I'll allow Director Prenslow to introduce him, but he is here to watch over us. For those of you who don't know Tim, and Jake's not with us today. So Tim's here to watch over us, but I know how much Dan cares about Tim. So I'll let Dan do the formal introduction.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. So yeah, Jake, I think is on vacation. I hope, I think that's it. And if you don't know Tim Monahan, Tim was the lead supervising attorney for you. Well, it was our attorney when there used to be just two. I'm sure Lisa Reynolds is listening. I'm pretty sure we have like 92 anymore that we pay. But Tim was just one of two way back when, 30 plus years. And so he's really been a confidant of mine. He's got really good advice. He's never lost a case for us in court. That to me is astounding. And he's just a real measured voice. I tease him. Sometimes he likes to be more of a manager than a lawyer, but that's part of what makes him extremely beneficial to our agency, because he thinks through that, not just with a law, yes or no, black or white. So Tim's filling in. He does work a couple days a week still, but doing that, he couldn't do the full time that Jake's doing. So welcome, Tim. Thank you. And he might be a golfing buddy too. So
welcome, Tim. Commissioner McDaniel.
I know that we don't have Jim on the line yet, but I did. Hopefully, he can hear us if he can't speak. And I just wanted to personally say thank you to you, Michelle, and to Jim and to Robert for all that you brought to the commission. You know, people leave a legacy, and I think you all left them, not just because of the incredible amount of time that you spent on this commission, 8 years, just remarkable to me, the sacrifice that you have to make to do that. But it was really something Taisha said earlier, it's really by the actions you took over the time that you leave your legacy. And even in the short time that I've been on the commission with all of you, you know, I've seen you all take action to change how the citizens of the state engage in wildlife resources. And so I want to thank you for that, and want to make sure you understand that you've left a legacy here in the state of Colorado. Second, I want to say, you know, for me, for sure, you know, the relationships with the three of you is not temporary. And I hope we stay in touch, because I count you as friends and not just a co-worker or a co-commissioner. And that, you know, we continue our relationship, and I've heard from you already that you all want to stay engaged with us, so that's fantastic. We're really going to miss your experience. We're really going to miss your expertise, your insight, your wisdom. You know, we've heard a lot of inspiring thoughts today about equity and diversity and racial justice. The three of you brought real diversity to us and also diversity in thought. You brought real value from your own, bringing your own life perspective and passing that on to us fellow commissioners. Anyway, we're really going to miss you, and thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Marvin. Yeah, this is going to be a tough one to move on from. Commissioner Vardy.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to echo the sentiment of Commissioner McDaniels. It's been such a gift and an honor to serve with the three of you. And I've learned so much from all three of you. Michelle, your leadership are going to be some very large shoes to fill for all of us. And I pledge to do my part in honoring the legacy that you've created. And Commissioner Bray and Commissioner Vigil, what you have accomplished in this state in terms of relationships with our fellow agrarians is just really amazing. And I pledge to do what I can to carry forward that legacy as an agriculture commissioner and to honor both those that have come before us and allow for the future generations of agriculture to thrive. And just have so much gratitude for having had the opportunity to serve with you, and look forward to transitioning our service together to friendship in the future. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Eden. Vigil is back on. Laura and Katie tell me that they can unmute him. Jim, are you with us?
I am, but I don't know if you could hear me. I'm having trouble with my mute. Am I there?
We got you.
Oh, very good. Well, hey, thank all of you for the really kind words. I don't know that I contributed that much, but I sure had fun. And on the commission for the 8 years, I also learned an awful lot from this whole commission. Past and the past and the present commission have really been a lot of inspiring folks. The 8 years has gone really quick, and so I'm going to miss all of you on the commission, but I'm especially going to miss Michelle and Robert because those 8 years we've become friends. And that's important. The other folks that I'm really going to miss are Dan Prenslow and his entire staff. You know, government employees generally get a pretty bad rap, and I've had a lot of experience in being a county commissioner. I traveled a lot internationally. I worked with a lot of like the Bolivian government and our county and our state governments. And of all those people, I can say that Colorado Parks and Wildlife staff have broken that mold, and you're all just wonderful. For everybody that I've met, and even some that I haven't really met, but I've talked to on the phone or had some kind of engagement with, all been terrific. Everybody. So I'm going to enjoy my time off of that and get some things done that I like to do on my own. But I'm going to miss it all. So thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
Woohoo, Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
We should also say we will miss your partners and spouses because they've become part of the team, all of you.
It's true. It's true. Yep. Well, I know we'll certainly keep it in touch. I want to, we do have one public comment on this agenda item, but before we do that, I'm seeing these recognized, and both Emily Urbanik and Commissioner Hauser have let me know that these are, in fact, GOCO board member meetings. So thank you so much for joining us. We have Mo Siegel, Mina, is it Liebert? I may have
It's
mispronounced
Liebert.
spells.
Thank you.
Liebert, welcome. Pam Dennehy and Linda. So thank you all for being here. I really, really happy to have you. And after this agenda item, if there is, at any point in that agenda, if there's something that you want to comment on, maybe raise your hand, or if you want to hold off until public comment tomorrow, we can. We do have public comment. Dan Gates, Katie, can you unmute Dan's line?
Yes, just a moment.
Thank you.
Dan, are you able to talk?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
You can. That's
Yes.
amazing. Well, thank you very much, Chairman Zimmerman and Commissioner Bray, Commissioner Vigil. We felt that necessary from the sportsman community of the state of Colorado to not let something go by unnoticed and make an acknowledgement about your 30 plus years of combined service, and not only thank you, but also extend our overall thanks for your passion and your time and your dedication and your sacrifice for what you've provided. And just a couple things for the notes. I mean, the thankless job of being in a volunteer position from a commission position, or any other position for that matter, is something to where you get criticized when you make the right decisions, and you get criticized when you make the wrong decisions. And it's the Monday morning quarterbacks that always want a piece of the pie, but they don't really want to be part of the puzzle, that cause for disruption in people's perceptions and their inability to compromise, negotiate, and look at what people are doing as people and what they're trying to do, what's best for the cause. You guys are making decisions on behalf of 900 plus employees and 960 species of wildlife, 926,000 sportsmen, 585,000 acres of publicly accessed state trust lands, 19 fish hatcheries that produce over 90 million fish per year. You got 41 state parks that you're making decisions on that host 15 million visitors. The agency generates hundreds of millions of dollars that have a total economic impact of over $5 billion annually and supports over 46,000 jobs. And for anybody to criticize what your motives or intent or what your passions or desires are, they haven't served in those type of positions, and they need to really look themselves in the mirror. I'll leave you on one final quote, if it's all right. And I think that the people that maybe have heard this before could appreciate it, and the people that haven't heard it could maybe learn something. But it goes as, "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does so actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat." That was done by Teddy Roosevelt, 1910. It's called The Man in the Arena. And I think gratitude should go out to individuals who spend as much time and dedication as what three individuals like yourselves have. And I'm appreciative myself to call you friends, associates, compadres, sportsmen, and commissioners. And I really appreciate your time and service. And I know the sportsmen and women of the state of Colorado do as well.
Wow, thank you, Dan. I'll turn that quote right around on you as well. You have done so much for this agency and for the natural resources of this state as well. So thank you for signing up for public comment on this, and we certainly appreciate everything you do as well. Commissioner
very much.
Schaefer, I think you had a hand up. Are you still?
Yeah, I'm going to reserve the majority of my comments for when we can be in person with something cold in their hand, and I won't be recorded for posterity's sake. But I just want to say how appreciative I am of all three, not just your contributions to the agency and Colorado's wildlife and recreation, but to the rest of us as human beings, and really being so welcoming as folks have come on and really learned through your tutelage. I'm highly appreciative of everything that you've done, not just for me as a commissioner and fellow commissioners, but also for me as a person. So I appreciate it, and I look forward to both toasting and roasting all of you in the future.
Thank you, Commissioner Schaefer. Yeah, we will certainly, as soon as in-person gatherings are safe or safer, I know Robert and Jim and I would all love to be able to join a barbecue or a dinner.
At Robert's Ranch.
Yes. Director Prenslow, I have the final word on this agenda item.
Thank you, Madam
wait.
Chair. And
Okay,
I along with Commissioner Schaefer, I'll reserve some, but I want to cover, quickly a couple things on all three. All three have been fantastic commissioners. All three are friends of mine. I'm trying to decide if I have to give Robert another sheep mount because he already has one. That's a dilemma I'm going to have to work on. Robert Bray is 12 years on the commission. And it was sad at the first 4 years, but dare I say, you don't poke a governor in the eye, and Robert figured that out. So then, but he did get on the second time. So that's a different discussion we'll talk about over a beer. Robert and I met on the Wolf Working Group, and that's not a fun place to meet, but we worked all through that. All I can say, Robert said it better than I do. His background and contacts in the agricultural community helped not only our relationship, but the relationship with Colorado Parks and Wildlife and Agriculture, and still does this to this day. Robert is the voice of reason. He doesn't talk loud and he doesn't talk often, but when he talks, you probably ought to listen. And that's true in the agricultural community and the wildlife community. So he went from a lone voice. I never saw any more 10-to-1 votes or 8-to-1 votes on Robert's start to, if you pay attention, Robert now leads most of or a lot of those discussions. And so for that, I'm thankful. So just thanks for being the leader, Robert. I'll stop there. Give my love to Debbie. Jim Vigil was my commissioner in the Southeast region as a regional manager. We built quite a relationship. He was a county commissioner first. I'd met him when we were touring the mine on the Bosque. And I can tell you, and I'll end fairly quickly, but Jim and Ellie are both dear friends of mine. They kind of adopted me, and Brenda and I adopted them, and we enjoy their company. Outside of that, Jim is a gracious person. So is Robert. Jim is a Marine, though. Don't ever forget, Jim is a Marine, and he's a strong individual. Michelle was on the Habitat Stamp. I learned her background, enjoyed on the Habitat Stamp Committee with her. As she mentioned, the part she didn't is somebody challenged me above and said, well, we need a woman from the West Slope that's a Democrat. And I just moved from the West Slope, and they said, well, you don't know any women in the West Slope that are Democrat. And I said, well, just a second, I might. And so that's how we started. I've watched her develop and grow up along with me on these 8 years, get her MBA, have just all kinds of influence now in the space of conservation and now wind and solar, etc. I did have the pleasure of going to her and Jeff's wedding last year, right about a couple weeks ago, and it had to be in Utah, but it was a stone's throw from Colorado. So Michelle is a dear friend of mine. Congratulations to her and Jeff on the start of a new stage in their life. And all three of you, again, congratulations and thank you for your service to the citizens of this state, and the wildlife and the parks of this state couldn't have done it without you. And we will schedule a in-person, and then we'll really get out the good roast. So hats off.
Thank you, Director Prenzo. I don't know if I'm looking forward to the roast or not, but I'm looking forward to seeing everyone and sharing a cold drink, that's for sure. All right, well, sentiments aside, we are gonna move on with business. Director Gibbs, I think we did, as I was running around getting a backup Wi-Fi beacon. Did you have anything additional that you wanted to add to your update, your Natural Department DNR update?
Yeah, Madam Chair, actually, when you had a connection problem, I was able to give my update. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I don't think I've seen Kate Greenberg's name, but I did see Wayne East. Wayne, would you like to provide the Department of Agriculture update?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Unfortunately, Commissioner Greenberg is unable to attend today's meeting. She asked if I would.
Wayne,
Yes.
Wayne, if you can hear me, for some reason you sound like you're in robot land. I don't know if maybe it's your earbuds or.
Michelle, I stopped his video to see if that helps.
Okay. Wayne, do you want to try again?
Sure. Is it better now? I took my headphones off. I'm just using my laptop.
Yep, that's much better.
Okay. As I was saying, unfortunately, Commissioner Greenberg was unable to attend today, and she asked if I would present the update on behalf of the agency. And building on many of the comments earlier, last week, Commissioner Greenberg issued a public statement condemning racism and laying out the responsibility of the Department of Agriculture to reflect, learn, listen, and build toward equity. We are beginning this work internally this week, but it will take new, meaningful engagement with many new communities outside the department as we grow. We are excited about this absolutely fundamental work and look forward to continuing to be a partner with CPW and DNR in it. Moving on to the COVID world that we find ourselves in, it's amazing that it's mid-June now, and obviously farmers and ranchers have been very busy. We've been grateful that agriculture has been deemed critical from the beginning of COVID, which means we haven't seen a break in work this season. It also means a lot of people in ag are at greater risk of infection. At CDA, we've been working hard to ensure adequate resources, PPE, and education for ag producers and ag workers so that we can keep our teams as healthy as possible. One change we've seen from COVID is a massive increase in demand for local food. We are capitalizing on that through expanded outreach and promotion of Colorado agriculture through Colorado Proud. You can get connected to your local producers at coloradoproud.com. At CDA, we are continuing to telework through the summer. We have been almost entirely operational throughout COVID-19. Some of our temporarily suspended field inspections are coming back online as we understand how to do so safely for the health of our team and customers. Late last month, CDA launched our Mental Health Program 2.0. This is a partnership with CDA and the Colorado Crisis Services to provide free, confidential mental health support to our rural and ag communities. We held a Facebook Live event with the governor, Commissioner Greenberg, and the Executive Director of the Department of Human Services. We have film, print, and radio resources in both English and Spanish, and you can check it all out and share these resources however you see fit at colorado.gov/rural mental health. As many of you know, advancing farmer-led soil health is one of the top priorities of the department. While our funding requests were denied by the legislature, we continue to charge ahead to bring more resources, technical support, and community to the effort. Hopefully we'll have a bigger update at our next meeting. On rabbit hemorrhagic disease, the Colorado Department of Agriculture has confirmed new cases of rabbit hemorrhagic disease, RHD, in domestic rabbits in Weld County, adding to cases previously reported in El Paso and Montezuma counties. Additionally, Colorado Parks and Wildlife has verified cases of RHD in wild and feral rabbits in Alamosa, El Paso, Prowers, and Pueblo counties, And I understand that results are pending on a potential case in Adams County, but we don't know the results yet on that one. Current CDA guidance on rabbit shows, as well as an up-to-date map of confirmed cases in Colorado, is available on CDA's website. With incidents of RHD increasing in Colorado and Western states, CDA and CPW are asking the public to watch for multiple dead or sick rabbits, which can suggest RHD or could be a sign of tularemia or plague. The latter two diseases can cause serious illnesses in people. We are urging the public to not handle or consume sick or recently deceased rabbits, and do not allow pets to contact or consume wildlife carcasses. Vesicular stomatitis, or VS, which is a disease that primarily affects equine species, has been detected in Texas, Arizona, and New Mexico. While Colorado hasn't had a positive case in 2020 so far, it unfortunately appears it may just be a matter of time as the positive cases in Arizona and New Mexico continue to spread north towards Colorado. And lastly, Commissioner Greenberg wanted to be sure to give a shout out to all the CDA staff for continuing to go above and beyond in response to COVID. That includes our teams who still come into the office every day, our team members who are remote, and our field staff. And with that, Madam Chair, it concludes the CDA update.
Thank you, Wayne. Great to have you. And I appreciate the, yep. Let's go to Director Prenzlow. Did you have additional CPW updates, comments?
I did, Madam Chair. Thank you. I'll try and be brief because I know we're going long, but I do appreciate the GOCO board members that are present and staff. I appreciate that very much. They had a robust meeting. I participated through the whole thing today, and I won't shout out all of them, but I will give a quick shout out. They approved the director's grants, and one of them was to fund like $21,000 for trash containers and steamboat for a trial to go to no bear mortalities in steamboat. We hope we get there, but ultimately you got to start with the trash and human behavior. So GOCO is such a great partner. Chris and Emily, we'll hear more, I think, from Emily this afternoon, but just want to tell them thanks for that. It was nice to participate. I'm still saddened we couldn't do it in person in June with both boards, and we'll endeavor to try and work that in again. So a couple of quick examples of increased outdoor activity just at a global scale. Colorado Parks and Wildlife sold near 100,000 more fishing licenses, including second rod stamps since March 1st of this year. That's about a 25% increase. Our ANS inspections are up 50% and decontaminations are up 55%. The busiest spots are Pueblo, Chatfield, Horsetooth Reservoir, Boyd, and Cherry Creek. Next coming is the West Slope, as the West Slope kind of opens up again for business. Our parks, our utilization are up at least 30 to 40% across the state. So our field people, our inspectors, our hatchery people, et cetera, have been more than double dutying. So I appreciate that very much. You can see that people are getting outside, which we've been talking about. Operational plans, as the commission knows, it's a great deal to discuss. We're focused on our immediate business, but I'd like to take just a minute, an opportunity to talk about our strategic plan. Later this afternoon, 4 members of our leadership team will walk you through the operational plan that we'll use to measure how we are doing with the implementation of our strategic plan. And as you know, the implementation of the strategic plan is really the responsibility of the director because it's allocating operational budgets and directing staff. With that being said, though, I value the commission's feedback, ensure that the plan reflects our shared priorities for the agency. And so I thought it was important for the commission weigh in. Last but not least, our wildly important goals or WIGs. This month, we were wrapping up our work with a consulting company in Cactus on increasing CPW's relevancy as a way to lay out the groundwork for conversations about increasing sustainable revenue sources. We plan to present those outcomes in July to you. It was a terrific last month to have the commission approve adding another 200,000 acres to the public access program, and appreciate the state land board with that. And those opportunities will be available for this September. I've also been working with Executive Director Gibbs on revisions to WIGs for the upcoming fiscal year. The new WIGs are still being finalized. We expect to continue working on expanding public access, but under a broader umbrella of balancing outdoor recreation and conservation. We also want to continue focusing on sustainable funding for parks and wildlife. And last but not least, I want to just say, I know I've copied you on all of my internal communications, but I want to reiterate that we've opened up camping at all of our state parks around the state. We've now opened up our front door offices to the public, so our customer facing publics and our visitor centers. And we're opening yurts and we're talking about swim beaches, et cetera, as we continue to move. The only office that is closed is 1313 downtown. That's still due to the vandalism. And so we'll work on that. A couple quick updates. Senate Bill 3 on Fisher's Peak looks like, and Doug talked about that, looks like we might skate through with that and support for about $1 million to help us open up Fisher's Peak quicker and better. And Senate Bill 217, which Commissioner Garcia talked about, is the police accountability. We're staff and DNR are working diligently on that to make sure that we reflect what should be in that bill. So with that, unless there's any questions for me, that's a quick update on around the state of Colorado.
Any questions, comments for Director Prenslow? All right.
I just have a quick one. That's
Please
all
go
right.
ahead, Commissioner Hauser.
Thanks. I shared with Director Prenslow that my husband and I ran Loma to Westwater on the Colorado River last weekend, and noted at the boat launch the new signage regarding the requirement of a fishing license or a hunting license to access those properties effective July 1st. So nice job to the team for getting those out there. And of course, I had to ask myself, do I need one of those in addition to my river permit? And of course, the answer is yes. So preparing ahead for post-July, just want to say, great job. I can't imagine how many properties that we have to cover, not just for that kind of announcement, but there were certainly the COVID protocols and everything else posted everywhere and on every sort of all the way up and down the river as well. So just mostly kudos, and it was sort of nice to see our work, in print, sitting right there in a laminated sign on at the boat launch. So thanks to the team.
I know in our public comment packet later, item 22 tomorrow, I know there's also been a comment on our work on, for the requirements around state wildlife areas, both positive and requesting other options than a fishing or a hunting license. So I don't know, probably tomorrow during public comment might be the best time. Okay, any other hands? All right, Justin Rudder, financial update, you're up.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners. My name is Justin Rudder. I'm the Assistant Director for Financial Services and Capital Development. And I bring to you today a financial update, as I do most months. So within your packet, there should be a budget narrative along with some excerpted financial reports to review. But first, I'd like to kind of set the stage of where Colorado Parks and Wildlife fits in the wider budget view of the overall state. As has been mentioned a couple of times, the General Assembly is still meeting here in June to pass needed bills and also to finalize a budget that fills a $3 billion hole. That's a drastic, it's the largest downturn I've seen. I've only seen a couple, but this is a drastic hole to fill. During this time, other DNR agencies have lost considerable cash resources to sweeps as the legislature works to fill that hole, but also other programs such as education have seen drastic reductions to their programs as well. CPW as an agency was not affected during this balancing. State employees will pay a little, or will have a slight reduction in net pay next year, including CPW employees based on existing para law, but CPW as a whole was not affected by the balancing needs of the state. As Director Prenzo mentioned, in fact, Senate Bill 3 is moving quickly towards adoption, which includes $1 million of general fund in this historic downturn. We are holding a very special place as far as being able to meet our mission and protect our assets. Looking forward to the next budget request for fiscal year 22, which the work for that began in April. And so that will be the request that we can deliver in November and goes to the General Assembly for consideration next legislative year. The instructions have come out from OSPB. For context, during the request for this fiscal year 21 request, we were asked by OSPB to provide scenarios of 2% increases or 5% decreases to kind of make departments examine their priorities and choose whether those increases were worth offsetting decreases or to identify savings that might be used elsewhere in the state. Fiscal year 21 instructions, or fiscal year 22 instructions came out, and there is no increase scenario that OSPB is looking to contemplate. They're looking for 10% reductions to budgets. However, CPW as an enterprise who is dependent on our own funds to fund our budget, we have been exempted from those instructions. The only, at this point in the conversation, the only thing that's under consideration is the $125,000 general fund that we received to give free entrance to veterans. That is on the table with all the other general funds in the state, but the majority of our funds are not under consideration at this time. So I'm going to attempt to share a screen if I'm able to. Should be this one. So hopefully you have the second portion of my update with the numbers pages in front of you. I just wanted to have that in front of everybody so that we can, if the people don't access it online, they can at least see it as we're talking. As you recall, last time I was in front of you, I gave an update that included information through quarter three, which ended end of March 2020. Our data always lags a bit, just based on the mechanics of how things get into the state accounting system. So the information I bring for you is through April. Starting on page 6, this is the all wildlife funds combined. There's a couple things I wanted to bring your attention to, and I do want to apologize for the clunky presentation a bit. The reports always come in the same order. However, I wanted to address some things up front and then spend more time on the parks issues, so I kind of go out of order on the pages. On page 6, there's a couple things to pay attention to though. Up at the top, you can see that year over year, we're experiencing about a 10% growth in license revenue. This reflects those revenues collected for the fiscal year 19 big game season, so last fall and winter. The 2020 draw application, so the application that was earlier this year, and it's just the results are being announced now, and current year licenses. So even though we're collecting revenues for the 2020 draw application and 2020 hunting season, those revenues will not be reflected until after the close of this fiscal year, because we won't earn that revenue until the hunting season actually occurs. So that $10 million is related primarily to increases in last year's big game. Moving down to the bottom, there's a $7 million figure that's highlighted in orange. This is the increase from 2019 capital expenditures to 2020 capital expenditures. So that's a substantial increase that I wanted to highlight. And what is really being reflected there is that over the past couple of years, since the passage of the Future Generations Act, the CPW leadership team has made a few budget changes, including taking our small capital budgets, which is a $5,000 to $100,000 project in our vernacular. So a small capital budget used to be $700,000. It's now $6 million. And those project dollars are available to staff for 3 years to use. We also created an internal shooting range budget to make shooting range improvements. That stands at $1 million a year, and a heavy equipment budget for the wildlife side of the agency. That's also $1 million a year. So we've gone from essentially a $700,000 investment in our properties a year to $8 million, and those dollars are all alive for 3 years. So we can expect to see substantial expenditures reflected here as we continue to take care of our properties, take care of what we already own. So I'm going to move the screen back up to page 4, which is where we are at all parks funds combined. And there's a few items to bring to your attention here. Highlighted in orange at the top of the page, you can see that we are seeing a $3 million growth year over year in license, passes, fees, and permits. So that's entrance fees and camping. what if we would go back to a month ago, what the number that was reflected there was an $800,000 loss. So we saw almost a $4 million swing in 1 month of reporting data. I do want to caveat that as we look at smaller and smaller time periods of data, there's more timing variations. It may be that somebody went on vacation the last week of the month and didn't get a revenue entry entered, and then we shifted revenue from 1 month to another. So it's hard to kind of read the tea leaves from month to month, but it is encouraging to see positive growth in revenue for sure. Also on this page, before I move on to kind of the detailed information behind the last license passes of fees and permits, you can see highlighted in blue, two different numbers. It looks like GoCo support was down dramatically for this period. So showing almost a $3 million drop in GoCo support for the period of April year over year. And down below, we also see that we've done almost a $3 million reduction in capital investments for parks in the month of April year over year. And that contributes to kind of that $3 million in the single month carries out into the larger year. So first of all, GoCo works on a reimbursement basis. So the $3 million drop in capital improvements is what leads to the $3 million drop in revenue from GoCo. We did not do capital improvements that need reimbursed, so we did not get the money from GoCo. That doesn't mean that the grants are gone. It just is how the timing worked out for those expenditures. The 4.6 million that we see in difference year to year suggests that we're slowing our capital investment considerably. But in looking into it further, I found that in April of last year, in April of 2018 to 2019, was the closeout for the initial phases of Sylvan Lake Dam, which is a rather expensive project, and we had large invoices coming due all at once. I was talking to our capital program manager, Margaret Taylor, about this prior to the meeting, and looking at more current data, looking at the kind of the project database that we use to manage projects, it looks like we are not slowing, in fact, maybe increasing capital investment year over year, despite what the April data is showing. It's just a blip of timing. Also on this page, and before we move on, I just want to point out a small quirk highlighted here in green. That's the severance tax going to support parks. This is not a drop in support from 2019 to 20. It's rather another timing issue and a change in accounting practice. So at this time, we are still receiving the nearly $2.5 million of severance tax to support state park operations as we have in years past. But looking at just this month, where the transfer was made last year, whereas this year we are charging directly, it looks like there's a drop of that is incorrect. Then moving on to page 4, this is the detail. I do want to point out that this is this is year to date. This is not April. This is all the way through April. So we don't have just period data for April pulled out here. But I did want to highlight a couple items here as well. Looking at starting up here at park passes, you see a $1.8 million increase year to year. That is certainly what we're hearing from the field, right? We've heard this morning, we've heard numerous times about how busy the season is and how we're seeing historic visitation. Look, I think some might even say, based on what I'm seeing, why is it only 1.8 million? This is only through April, but in a typical year, we might do about $15 million of revenue on passes, and we might see about $15 million in visitors. Really, the translation of visitor to dollars is not a single day pass. It's not a single annual pass. It works out to about $1 per visitor. So $1.8 million increase year over year is a substantial amount of bodies likely moving through our parks, but each new body within the finances looks like it only brings another $1. Each day of visitation brings only another $1 to our coffers. So even though we might be at record capacity levels for visitation, it does not translate necessarily into gangbusters for our funding. Moving down to camping, it's surprisingly flat year over year. This is again at the end of April. So this is somewhat encouraging considering that we were not having camping in the month of April. In fact, when I was before you last time, I told you that if all the April reservations were canceled, which they were, it would cost us approximately $500,000. Looking at kind of the year over year comparisons, it looks like we not only lost the $500,000 of already made reservations, but perhaps another $500,000 of reservations that were yet to come. I'm interested to see the data coming through for May. We should be able to see initial takes on that here fairly soon. We do weekly runs of Aspera data for revenue and then book those into core over the next 3 days. So we're about 10 days behind on revenue. Should be able to update that here in the near future. But brings us to kind of the secondary point. With Camping Open, we've got what we call here reconcile to general ledger. I talked to my analyst that produces this data earlier today. As I mentioned in the write-up, we were expecting a new report from Aspera yesterday that would help us complete that reconcile to general ledger and make that spread of where it's appropriately should be contained. I heard this afternoon that they did deliver that report, but we have not had time to test it or to implement it yet. But what realistically is in those orange numbers is camping revenue that we have collected, but that will be for camping in the next fiscal year. So that's the deferred revenue number. You can see that year over year, we're a little bit over $1 million ahead of where we are, but in revenue for next year. So I guess to take home for me on Parks Cash is that we're behind. We lost some money to closing down camping. We've made up some money with passes overall. Our expenses seem to be staying in line, and hopefully we will not see a June bump that we have typically seen in years where spending accelerates in the month of June. I'm not confident that we're going to close the year with positive net working capital, but I think by the end of the season, we will be back in positive net working capital land where we have more assets than we have liabilities. Another consideration that I've talked to you about is how much cash we actually have in the bank, regardless of liabilities. As of 2 days ago, we had $3.5 million in the bank. We still have to get through a month of operating expenses. We still have to get through a biweekly payroll, which is temporary employees. We still have to get through a full month of annual employee salaries. But we also have, from that time period that I looked, we still had 3 weeks at least of revenue to book. So it's my belief that the year end is going to be a little bit choppy, but all the indications for camping and visitation seem to point towards us getting back on our feet quickly. At the kind of end of the visitation season, I plan to take a hard look to see not only where we are at the current time, but kind of where we deviate from what we expected at the beginning of the year, what the kind of COVID loss was. And I plan to report that back to you sometime towards the end of summer. But with that, I will take any questions that anybody has.
Thank you, Justin. Commissioner Garcia.
Justin, I'd like a little more explanation. I'm still confused about the reconcile to the general ledger and the problem with Aspera. And if it's a problem, we had it last year, so I don't understand. And can we fix it? Can we get it back to where it should be in the proper accounting and on the right line in the ledger? That's my first question. My second question is on the severance tax. I know you talked about your accounting adjustment for that on the cash, but you also, last time we met, talked about the volatility. And we know that severance taxes are going to be a problem. What do you foresee, and what happens with the programs that are financed by those taxes?
Certainly, and thank you for the questions. You mentioned that we had the same reconcile to general ledger problem last year, and that is true. I think we are at 18 months working on Aspera on this individual problem of camping deferrals. I was excited to see that they did deliver the updated report yesterday. So the issue is that when we are pulling data for this particular report, we were looking at sales date of the camping reservation, and that doesn't tell us which fiscal year the revenue will be earned in. The request of the report was to add, I might get the term wrong, but it's essentially the visitation date. So it's the date that the camping will actually be used. And so when we would actually earn the revenue. With the inclusion, so I think I forget how many dates there are, six to 10 different dates within the system. And so the report was originally built with the wrong dates, at least for this portion of the report. It sounds like, based on my analyst pulled a 1 week of data just to get a test report, because a full year of data takes 4 to 8 hours to run. You pulled 1 week of data just before this, and it looks like the visitation date is being pulled appropriately. And so I'm hoping that zeroes out the reconciled to general ledger line, but it may not. What is really happening is that the accounting side of my shop gets the weekly transfers into the checking accounts. We have reports that reconcile to those, and they go through and book them appropriately. These kind of commission report numbers come at the data from a different direction and are at a less detailed level, that are more summary level, so that we can pull larger chunks of data at a time. The information the accounting uses can only be pulled a week at a time, or else it bogs down the system and we don't get the report. In order to do the kind of larger level analysis, we need bigger chunks of data. And so we've been working with the Spira to get this report to where when we pull the same set of data for the same summary data for a same time period where accounting has entered detailed data, that we mesh up. Based on the deferral numbers last year, this report fix should wipe out the general ledger entirely. It might pop up another small issue, but we'll chase that down as we need to. On severance tax volatility, obviously, I think everybody knows that the oil and gas industry, especially in Colorado, is not in a healthy place. We get severance tax in 3 different ways. We get 4 different ways. $2.5 million goes to support state park operations. A small sliver of severance tax goes to offset the wildlife side of the agency's indirect cost payments, which are payments to DNR Executive Director's Office for their services. And then we get those are considered tier 1 or core programs. Those are kind of the highest level of priority within the severance tax operational account. There's also the natural resource grant programs, or what used to be called tier 2 programs, including for CPW, and those are the Aquatic Nuisance Species Program and the Species Conservation Trust Fund, which deals with threatened and endangered species programs within CPW. For aquatic nuisance species and SCTF, we expect some disbursements this upcoming year, fiscal year 21, but we expect those to be restricted until we get a better picture of severance tax as a whole. Going into the next fiscal year, there's not expected to be enough revenue to fund the tier 2 or grant programs. So to that end, CPW has applied for a federal grant for the Aquatic Nuisance Species Program. It's from the Motorboat Access Program, and it will cover the cost of the program for a year. We also receive approximately $2 million of sticker money for registrations for the Aquatic Nuisance or the Mussel Free Colorado Act, which will add to our reserves. And then we have $4 to $6 million of cash reserves for that program already. So we're setting up the Aquatic Nuisance Species Program to be able to operate for 3 to 4 years without any additional influxes of severance tax. For Species Conservation Trust Fund programs, we tend to front load those programs. If it's a 3-year or 5-year study, most of these happening in Jeff Versteeg or Reed DeWalt's shops. If it's a 3 to 5 year study, we would request all of the money in a single fiscal year and then spend it over multiple fiscal years. So though we will not be able to start new programs with the Species Conservation Trust Fund transfers that we would expect, we don't expect to need to curtail or stop any current programs that were funded with that in the past. Moving out into that second year that I referenced, when there's no money for the tier 2 or grant programs, there is a projection that we might not have enough to fully fund tier 1 programs, or the core programs, which includes the $2.5 million to state park operations. We are not alone in that boat. Also included in that tier 1 is the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, the Division of Reclamation, Mining and Safety. I believe Avalanche Information Center has some, if I recall correctly. And I'm going to miss some, but there's other DNR programs that are funded out of that account. And that's kind of that's a wait and see. That's a scary cut that might be coming to the park side of our agency. $2.5 million is very impactful on the parks operating side. It's nearly half of the Oil and Gas Conservation Commission's budget, so they're in a worse boat than us, I guess. But I think we're all just waiting to see what happens to oil and gas and general fund over the next 2 years.
Thank you, Justin. I would ask, with the permission of the director, that you keep us abreast on that. Those are some significant numbers and some very good programs. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Commissioner Garcia. Any other discussion? I know we had pretty good conversation last month about some of the impacts from coronavirus on the park. So Justin, we certainly appreciate that update. I don't see any other hands being raised, so let's go ahead to our break. We are a little bit behind, which I knew we would be because I know I wanted to take a little extra liberty on that agenda item 4. So we are at 3:55. We have a 5-minute break. Let's try to be back here at 4. And we'll start with agenda item 9.
Did Mark Leslie provide the music while we were on break?
Nobody sure enjoyed it.
I was wondering the same. But it didn't sound quite good enough to be Mark Leslie.
Oh, you guys flatter me. Flatter
Excuse me. Excuse me. Yes, it is.
I like it, Commissioner Adams.
Commissioner Adams, have you heard Mark Leslie's band? Have you heard his band play?
I'm sorry. He has a band? Why are you holding out on me? Can I be a feature? My voice is wrecked right now, but I'm a very good singer. I do some very good country songs too.
It's pretty impressive.
He plays
pretty
at the
impressive.
he plays at the partners conference for us. So unfortunately, we didn't get to host them this year.
Last year?
Yeah, during the evening events.
Maybe we can get him to commit to playing for the going away party for the three of you when we
Good
meet.
idea, Commissioner Garcia.
Feels right.
That does feel right.
Well,
Commissioner
now that
Garcia
my
for the
time's
win.
up, it's been great visiting with all of you, so thank you.
Well, Mark, we'll let you take it away. Agenda item 9, regional updates on CPW properties.
Thank you. Madam Chair, Commissioners, Executive Director Gibbs, Director Prenslow, Mark Leslie, Northeast Region Manager, and appreciate the opportunity to visit with you virtually today. One thing I want to say first on a personal note, I want to thank Michelle and Jim and Robert for their service on the commission and for their leadership and wisdom working through issues. We've had a lot of significant issues, and I know many people have said it much better than I can, but I just want you to know how much it's appreciated from the staff and the regional manager level to have commission support and understanding and leadership. So thank you very much for that. This spring's been very challenging, but we've had many opportunities as well. Obviously, COVID has been something none of us were expecting or were ready to deal with. And I want to talk a little bit about the parks and the wildlife officers, but first, I want to give a shout out to our staff, because our staff through this whole thing, in my opinion, has been so professional and handled things in such a great exemplary manner. Everything that was thrown at us from the leadership team, from the executive orders from the governor's office that we had to work through and manage through. And everybody's been really done a great job out there on the ground, making sure that we continue to deliver our mission out there. And so I want to thank everybody for that. I want to talk a little bit about parks. The Northeast region has 15 state parks. And as such, being in the metro area and close to the Front Range metro area, we got hammered by visitation. And I don't want to just talk about bore you with a bunch of numbers, but normally on our parks model of operation, we are dependent on our seasonal employees and our temporary staff. And so generally when we have slower time periods during the winter months, we have a lower volume of staff members available, and we haven't started hiring people, and we don't carry those temporary employees at that time. And so we call that the shoulder season, and the shoulder season is changing over with climate change and those kinds of things. But this COVID virus hit us at the time when the governor was telling people to get out and enjoy nature. And people need people, and people need the outdoors, and we're critical to deliver those mission, those parts of the mission to the public out there. And so we were not adequately staffed at the beginning of the COVID virus. I will tell you that right now. And so we really had to scramble to make sure that we were ready for the onslaught of visitation that happened. And so the Northeast region, I do want to give you a few statistics. In 2019, our state parks in the Northeast region were visited by over 7.1 million people. And to put that in perspective, Rocky Mountain National Park during 2019 had 4.6 million visitors. So even in the Northeast region, we almost doubled what Rocky Mountain National Park has. And so that's the level of interest in our state parks. So one of the things that I think obviously we had challenges, but we had opportunities as well. And the big one for me is relevance. With the number of people that were visiting our parks and discovered us, I think we became even more relevant to the public. And I think that's going to help us going forward. We were able to utilize technology to work through some of these challenges. And just the fact that we're having a virtual meeting today and being able to have these discussions, I have weekly.
I'm on a call.
Okay. Sorry. So we have virtual visits and meetings, and we've worked through issues virtually, which is something new for all of us. We've been able to fine tune some operations, and we've continued to deliver our mission at a high degree. I want to give you some specifics here. Cotrex app launched a new trail closure tracking feature to enhance outdoor recreation experience during COVID-19. And with our help from local, state, and federal partners, the app monitors trail-related COVID-19 closures across Colorado on a daily basis. And these closures and alerts were represented on the Cotrex map when viewing details about trails, trailheads, and visitor centers. And at Bar Lake State Park, we did a series of Facebook Live events in an effort to not only bring the park to the people virtually, but to continue to educate and inspire. Just because there weren't any in-person programs for a while didn't mean we were stopping trying to educate the public about nature. And with kids being at home, Jackson Lake State Park wanted to help kids continue to learn about nature and launched its Reading with a Ranger program. And so every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we posted a video on our Facebook page of rangers reading outdoor themed children's books. And at two of the Denver metro area parks, Cherry Creek and Chatfield, we adjusted our operations to provide better customer service. The reopening of our entrance stations gave us the ability to provide direct messaging to our customers, provide better customer service at the entrances, and allow for proper social distancing by avoiding the crowded interactions at the pay stations. So we were, I think, pretty nimble and utilizing technology and changing operations to address social distancing and the continued concerns from the public. I have to admit, we had quite a few complaints from the public that went as high as the governor's office, concerned with people on our parks not social distancing and crowding and not wearing masks. And then we had other people that wanted us to close parks because of those issues. And so we were kind of caught right in the middle of some of those discussions. And so it's park dependent on what the geography allows us to be able to do as far as traffic control and entrance and exit stations and those kinds of things. But I think we did a really good job with working through those. We've got some pinch points that we're still trying to work on. Technologically, I think for my region, I would really like to have the ability to have a reservation system for everybody that visits a park. If we could, start with vehicles, reservation for vehicles. El Dorado Canyon comes to mind because it continues to be a hotbed of concern, and we're trying to work through that, but we're not quite there with the technology available to be able to do that. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and ask if you want to ask questions now or wait till the other region presentations and ask them at the end.
Each region has some pretty individual specific things. So let's see if there's any questions regarding, we can always come back to, but regarding.
This is Commissioner Adams, and I just want to echo Mark Leslie's comments about El Dorado Park, the state park, and the crowding that is there, and really hopeful that we can identify some additional strategies to address that. We already knew it was an issue, and that issue has been exacerbated. Folks are trying to stay within, Denverites especially are trying to stay within, closer to their homes, and Eldo is really one of the closest opportunities. And I too have noticed that, Mark, and really appreciate the different strategies you and your team are thinking about to mitigate both the relationship and improve the relationship with those who live in El Dorado Spring Canyon, as well as those that recreate there. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. Any other comments or questions for Regional Manager Leslie? Okay, I think stepping in for the Southwest region, we have Deputy Region Manager Heath Kim.
Thanks, Madam Chair, Executive
Great to have you.
Director Gibbs, Director Prenslow, Commissioners. I'd like to add to what Mark said about thanking staff. They're having to be really nimble out there right now with all the changes that keep coming at them, and they're very, very busy. And I'll also kind of go give some statistics on the parks here in the Southwest. Crawford has been at capacity on weekends and weekdays. Revenue is up 235% and visitations up 146% over May of last year. Staff reports that a lot of their visitation is coming from first-time users to the park. Mancos is up 37% over May of last year. Boat inspections at Navajo are up 180% over May of last year. We've had some repairs going on at the marina at Navajo, so the fuel service got back up and running just in time for boaters. And our new water treatment facility at Navajo treated 30,000 gallons of water over Memorial Weekend without any kind of issues. So it was kind of a new test for that water system. Paonia was closed until late, being in Gunnison County, and it was just recently able to open. Ridgeway is seeing a lot of use, and they are shorthanded also. Visitation of the park, there's at peak levels, and they're up at over 30% over last year. Schweitzer's busy. If you haven't been out there, it's a day use park. We have several large capital projects going on out there, so they're not seeing peak numbers of visitation because of those projects. We are redeveloping the swim beach out there, and it looks so good. Visitors are trying to use it prematurely. It's a pretty good project. Area offices are reporting that their phones are busier than usual, and they're selling much more boat registrations than normal. And I will leave this with the common theme from our customers, that they're very appreciative that the parks are open. We're hearing that all across the board. Thank you. And is there any questions for me?
Questions, comments for Heath? I have one. And this may not be directly for you, Heath. This may be for Justin, but I know Commissioner Vigil has brought this up a lot with regard to the budget and the parks budget specifically. And I wonder what your thoughts are with all the increased visitation, and I mean, everything you just 180%, 160%. I mean, all the numbers were over normal. I assume that comes with that increased revenue from day use and from annual passes, but I assume that also is going to come increased expenses, obviously, for managing the resource and staff and infrastructure. Is there any, I guess this might be a question for any of you or for Justin, is there any feeling of, will the increased revenue balance out the increased expense demand, or are we, any kind of thoughts on that yet, or does it remain to be seen?
I can answer a little bit from my point of view, then I can let Justin or the other RMs answer from their point of view. I know here we were really working on, with some of the news that was coming in from Justin's shop, we were really working on cutting expenses before heading into this. So I don't know if we're going to have higher expenses than we would have before, because we really were tying our belts before this in case we were going to come in with lower revenues. And I'll leave that at that, so I don't start stepping on Justin's toes. But
thank you, Justin. I don't know if you want to. It's not a question I need answered right now. It's just something that I didn't know if we had any thoughts on yet.
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating question, and my concern, kind of looking at the initial data, is that we're a business model that creates more expense the more we're used. Kind of going back to my earlier comments about each visitor brings about $1 of revenue to the park. That with the resource use and the consumables use, especially during COVID times where we are using more disinfectant, using more staff time to keep things clean, having to hire more temporaries to help manage crowds and backed up parks and backed up traffic when we're at capacity. it's something I've been looking into, but it's hard to get your hands around. And my fear is that increased visitation actually loses us money.
That's what I was curious about. It'll be interesting to see. I'll have to come, I don't know, listen in as member of the public when that financial update comes along. Region Manager Ackerman for the Southeast region.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Brett.
Hi, Madam Chair. Thank you. I appreciate the time to address the commission today. And I know that it seems redundant, but it's worth repeating. I just wanted to say how much I appreciate having worked under you and under Commissioner Vigil and under Commissioner Bray for nearly half my career. I appreciate the not only knowledge, but wisdom that you've added to the division. I appreciate your hard work. The only, I guess, black point there is that Commissioner Vigil said a statement for the very first time in 8 years. I don't agree with him, and that's when he said, I'm not sure I've contributed that much. And I appreciate Commissioner Vigil. He's done a wonderful job, has been a great mentor for me as well. It's like Regional Manager Leslie and Deputy Regional Manager Kim saw my outline, and so I'll deviate a little bit from it, but I also wanted to thank staff for the great work they've done during this closure and COVID period. It's been a very uncertain time and difficult time, and we've been, modifying protocols almost daily. And, I especially wanted to call out our customer service representatives. It's not very well known that really they never left the office. When our offices were closed, customer service representatives still reported to the office and answered phones, answered questions, and while they were closed to the public, still worked at the offices, in many cases being the only folks there. I'm really proud of their efforts and all that they've done to further our mission. And then once offices were reopened to the public, again, it's the customer service representatives that were there, front facing and welcoming customers in. And just wanted to say how much I appreciate their great work. We could go on about other members of staff for sure, but I'll leave it at that. I also wanted to mention the fact that it really has been eye-opening to see we all know that people love the outdoors in Colorado, but it's been very eye-opening to see that that's exactly the first thing that they choose to do when they're able to move about freely. And we've had a great opportunity to welcome lots and lots and lots of people to our properties in the Southeast. I will share a couple of figures with you here in a minute, but mostly I just wanted to kind of tell a story. I think one of the wonderful things that's come from this is our opportunity to work with local leaders. Under the direction of the governor and Director Gibbs and Director Prenslow, when it was time to start talking about opening things up and closing them down and what those restrictions would be, we met locally with county commissioners and city leaders and other relevant local leaders to help kind of talk through these issues together. And it was a great opportunity to be able to get to know them more in some cases, but also to see how much they care about what they do and how the many parts make a great whole here in Colorado. And very exciting for us to work through these difficult issues, but mostly in a very positive light. That has been difficult through many critical incidents associated with the visitation in our state parks. I did want to kind of highlight Pueblo a little bit. It was mentioned earlier. And I think one thing that we can really see here in Colorado is that water equals busy. If there's accessible water, we have folks there and wanting to be there. Pueblo Reservoir is our most visited state park in the state, and in the month of May had over 365,000 visitors. And so that set a new record for any month in Pueblo. And that was a month with, not great weather a lot of the time. And so we expect this next month to break that record again. Lake Pueblo does that with 15 permanent staff members. And we do bring on about 50 temporary staff members, most of which are aquatic nuisance species inspectors. That's about a 40% increase, as was mentioned earlier, in visitation at Pueblo, and is a difficult thing to work with, but also a wonderful thing to have people come and visit and enjoy what they provide at Pueblo. Through the last several months, they've worked through many critical incidents, ranging from unfortunate to tragic, and continue to do so at Pueblo and throughout the state with absolute professionalism. I wanted to also mention Assistant Director Heather Dugan's staff, who has one of the premier aquatic recovery teams, in my opinion, in the nation. And they also deal often with tragic and difficult circumstances and do so with exceptional professionalism. I'm grateful that we have them on staff. I did want to finish, and again, I haven't highlighted all the state parks or all of our wildlife areas, but I wanted to just make a blanket statement and say visitation is up. That's what we can say as far as the Southeast region. But I did want to mention that, late in May, I had a tweet sent, forwarded to me. And I won't mention the person because I didn't get her permission, but she's a prominent member of the deaf community and a prominent member of the National Association of the Deaf, and happens to be an archaeologist, and was visiting Lake Pueblo State Park. And she tweeted, "Park ranger at Lake Pueblo State Park." She was talking about Daryl Cedar at Pueblo State Park. "Thank you for knowing ASL and being able to communicate with me so easily. You were amazing, and I was shocked you signed back, so I didn't have time to process and say this to you. Y'all are the best." And I appreciated that very much. We do receive a lot of positive comments. We receive a lot of negative comments as well. But to know that in this time when staff really has been very, very taxed, it's been very difficult for staff to work through this ever-changing landscape. And to see comments from the public that they're being treated with exceptional kindness makes me very happy in the Southeast region. So with that, there certainly is a lot that we could talk about in all of our regions, but wanted to give you a snapshot of kind of where we sit. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Brett. Yep, and certainly common theme for sure. But I do love that people are reaching for the outdoors for their sanctuary. Any questions for the Southeast? Commissioner Adams.
Question, but excuse me, not a question, but a comment about the conversation that you had, or the staff member had around with the person doing American Sign Language. And again, just want to put a point in the parking lot around circling back to that accessibility issue. It's wonderful. When we talk about issues of access, that's another one that really, I think we have a really rich opportunity to build on and strengthen. Right now I know of Stoughton State Parks Care program. It's great to know that some of our staff members have capacities around, or linguistic competence around ALS, and just wondering if we are being intentional about ensuring that our parks have staff that have these competencies, these linguistic and cultural competencies. So I appreciate Brett Ackerman for letting us know. I didn't know that we had staff members with these linguistic competencies, and it's very exciting to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Adams. I really appreciate that. And in a quick response to your question, I'm not sure that we are being as intentional as we should be with those kinds of accessibility issues. And I think certainly that's something I'm thinking about. And we do have a lot of skills in the division along those lines. And we tend to use them incidentally rather than purposefully. And so I appreciate that comment and direction.
Thank you. All right, the Northwest region, the Serengeti of the West, Region Manager JT Romanski.
Hi, Madam Chair. Good to see you virtually, and the rest of the commissioners, directors. JT Romanski, Northwest Regional Manager. Appreciate being here today. As usual, my colleagues have left me about -4 minutes on this subject, so thank you guys for that. But I will consume a little bit of time and just, obviously the main purpose of this, from my perspective, really is just to sit here and thank profusely the staff around this region. I have 9 state parks, 5 wildlife areas, about 160 staff members, 10 different counties, as Brett alluded to earlier. The work that our managers have done here in cooperating with and working with all 10 counties and boards of county commissioners, emergency response personnel, has just been nothing short of unbelievable from my perspective. CSRs every single day are here early and leave late, and are continuing to answer phone calls, try and assist people however they can. And from a customer service perspective, my predecessor always said this, and I would reiterate it, that there is not another government organization that provides the level of customer service that our agency does. And this crazy times we're living in has done nothing other than ensure that is a fact. We just are incredible We've had some interesting times. While visitation certainly is up, we also have some comical situations where we're closing swim beaches like at Steamboat Lake State Park while there's 2 or 3 inches of snow on the ground. And of course, we're not having some of the issues there that we do in other places. Memorial Day weekend at Highline Lake State Park had more than 6,000 visitors over that weekend. And for the month of May, even with 11 days of no camping, we generated almost $105,000, which is up from $63,000 last year. So, you know, the amount of visitation at certain parks has just been unbelievable. Revenue at Harvey Gap was up 312% over last year. And so as we start moving through some of these things, while it's unprecedented, our staff has just absolutely stepped up and been courageous and innovative and thought of new ways and exciting things. Park manager Craig Preston at Stagecoach Lake State Park was trying to identify ways to do virtual fishing tournaments as an example. You know, I've got Pete Furman, a park manager here in Grand Junction, and Chris Middledorf, an area wildlife manager in Steamboat, both that literally led a statewide effort on PPE and trying to get things organized and ordered so that our staff and law enforcement personnel would be taken care of, and we were considering those things. So really, this is an opportunity for me to just, again, profusely thank all of them for so much work that they've done. Cameo, our great shooting and outdoor education complex, for about a month or so, we just literally didn't charge anything, but it was open and people were socially distancing. So people were trying to donate, people were trying to volunteer to help with things. And while unfortunately we've canceled 61 events out there, which essentially is could be up to about 2,100 visitors to Cameo, 75% of which are out of town. Even with all that, our revenue is up at Cameo. And so those are just examples of what Regional Manager Ackerman was suggesting, is that, you know, the second people could get outdoors, they flock to us. I mean, we're a known entity, we're a safe place. And we've done just an exceptional job as an agency. It's been incredible to watch the courage of all of our staff and also the courage of our leaders. Director Prenslow it hasn't been lost on him, and some of the things that have come to light, he has acted more than quickly and aggressively on, and hit the support for the staff has been just really awesome out there. So I'll keep it short and leave it with that. There's a ton of stories to tell after this, lots of positives and obviously lots of things that we've learned from and things that we're dealing with. So the last note, you know, Commissioners Zimmerman, Vigil, and Bray, you know, I have to personally also say thank you to you guys. You guys have been mentors and friends to me. The acceptance that I felt coming in as a new regional manager, and some of the education and just things that you've given me will never be lost on me. And you've made a huge impact on my personal life and my profession. So thank you guys so much for everything that you've done. I'll leave it with that and answer any questions that anybody might have for obviously the greatest region in the world and the Serengeti of the West.
Thank you, JT. Commissioner Hauser.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, and thanks to JT. I just would maybe comment on a couple of things. The work does go on, and again, I would just second JT's comment that this is the best and biggest and craziest and most diverse region, but that's because we live here, right? But having been a number of these properties recently, I mentioned, I think at the last commission meeting, that I finished my Hunter Ed at Cameo, and just the progress and the constant improvements and thoughtfulness around the customer experience has been really remarkable. I mentioned that we did Ruby Horse Thief last weekend, and so that boat launch is always a reminder of another type of property. But I also just want to mention that there was good news that at least in the local press, I think it was last week, JT, about the Basalt shooting range. And so I think it should be mentioned, given that that has been a real point of concern, obviously, in this valley. Our former commissioner is now the mayor, Bill Kane of Basalt. And so we've got long sort of continuum of relationships there. And so I just wanted to provide kudos to Matt Yamashita and others that are continuing to work through the recommendations of that special task force, and that it actually got picked up in a good news story, which is always good. And then I would just say I joined the State Bridge Deer Management virtual meeting, I think it was last week. I just listened in on that. And so again, just a note that, you know, the work goes on even in the middle of a pandemic and everything else that we're doing, and the toggling to, you know, a Zoom environment for our scientists and researchers and others has been really, really impressive. So just good job and well done.
Thank you, Commissioner Hauser. That means an awful lot to me and obviously my staff. And you're right. I mean, we've been able to pivot and overcome and adjust a lot of our normal day-to-day business activities and have been super creative. And just like when Basalt unfortunately happened, your advice to me about don't ever let something like that go to waste, right? I feel like that's the same here today. And all of these staff, from Matt Yamashita to others from Basalt, just, you know, you can't say enough about their level of ownership of these properties and how we work, our ownership with our local communities, who we are and how we deal with these things. And, you know, you can't be more proud. So thank you. Those comments mean an awful lot.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. JT, thank you for a special thanks to your people from the Northwest. They put on their aquatic Zoom visit last night on the new regulations that are coming out. They did a great job. And I'll tip my cards and tell you that I support those regulatory changes that they were suggesting last night. The only other thing is I would hope you would check Commissioner Hauser for her fishing license. She tipped her hat today that she's supposed to have one, but she didn't say she has one. So if you would check that. And the last thing is, where's the puppy?
Not due until, I don't have to have one until July 1st, Charlie. Puppy's coming. Puppy's coming.
Thanks for those comments, Commissioner Garcia. And I appreciate you guys all jumping in on some of these things. We're trying to make sure you're included in those and that the commission calendar is up to speed here in the region. And hopefully if you're not seeing something, as always, feel free to reach out to me. You're right, Reed Shop, the aquatic section, they are top shelf. They're on top of this stuff. We're trying to host a number of those different outreach Zoom type meetings just to start talking about some of the aquatic stuff and how we're trying to intend to manage some of those resources here. And so we're doing, I think, a good job. We can learn from some of this and figure out new ways to reach out to even other communities and other groups that we probably haven't done that great of a job in the past, but I feel like those things are going well. You're right, I do have a new puppy. There are photos and videos, although following yours, ours is nothing really other than cleaning up messes at this point in time, so it's not that impressive, but at some point in time, they will come.
Well, congratulations on the puppy. Thanks so much to all the region managers and all the staff. It's heavy times. So let's move into agenda item 10, and just for timekeeping purposes, Emily Urbanic has offered, thank you, Emily, to go tomorrow morning. So we can still get out in time for happy hour. So we'll go ahead with the CPW operational plan. Katie Lanter, Reed DeWalt, Brett Ackerman, Justin Rudder, and Lauren Truitt.
Thank you, Chair Zimmerman. This is Katie Lanter, Policy and Planning Supervisor for CPW. I'm going to kick off this presentation, kind of an overview of the process that we use to put together our latest operational plan, and then I'll turn it over to my colleagues that'll get into some of the plan specifics. So this operational plan, as the director mentioned, is how we are implementing the strategic plan that was approved by the commission in November of 2015. And our CPW strategic plan is a little bit different than some of the other ones that you may be familiar with, in the sense that it doesn't have a set timeline. Rather, we put together these operational plans every 2 years to guide the strategic plan implementation, and we just do that on a rolling basis. And then we report annually on our progress with the strategic plan and the Future Generations Act goals. Every November, we report to the Commission, the General Assembly, and publicly release a report. I wanted to say, you know, when the strategic plan was developed, there really was a high level of public participation, and we think that's one of the reasons that the plan stands the test of time well. So we had a 2-month public comment period for the strategic plan with a press release, an online public comment form in English and Spanish. We sent email notices to over 94,000 individuals. We held 11 strategic planning workshops across the state that over 350 people participated in. And we also had workshops with staff in 5 locations across the state. Finally, we also had a telephone town hall where we randomly called 100,000 people who had the opportunity to participate in a hour-long discussion and Q&A session. So today we're going to have members of the leadership team are going to give you an overview of the operational plan. It's our 3rd such operational plan since the strategic plan was approved by the commission. Each operational plan covers 2 fiscal years, which means this latest plan will start on July 1st of this year and go through June 30th of 2022. When we started working on this new operational plan last December, and we had almost 50 CPW staff directly involved. And then those 50 people were tasked to go back to their sections, their regions, to collect additional data, to have discussions. And we really asked them to think about 2 things. First, to think broadly about what's changed within the context within which we work since the last planning process, emerging opportunities and challenges, how to build on our successes, and even if there are things that we should discontinue doing. Second, we asked everyone to look at the current operational plan and think about what might make sense to carry forward and what new elements might need to be incorporated. And we think that this homework approach really allowed us to involve more staff than we have in prior planning processes. And it also let us reflect on current priorities, including the governor's wildly important goals, the Future Generations Act implementation, requests from the public, and so on. So then we held an in-person workshop in January where we kind of brought everyone back together, all the pieces, what they learned, and we continued drafting the plan over the next couple of weeks, and then it went to the leadership team for review. You may recall that we had planned to take this operational plan 3 to you all in the commission at your March meeting, but when that was canceled due to the pandemic, we did have some more opportunities in the sense that the leadership team did work through our budget for the coming fiscal year. So we thought it'd be smart to send this draft operational plan back out to staff to see if there's anything that needed to be adjusted in light of the COVID-19 outbreak and the budget decisions that the leadership team had reached. We did make some changes, such as lengthening the timeline for some projects where we anticipate delays now, removing some activities that weren't funded for this coming year, or adjusted if there were cancellations of work because of limitations on field work. So the leadership team did review the updated plan, and that version that was approved by the leadership team is what the commission received for today's meeting and is publicly posted on the website. As the director mentioned in his opening remarks, our intent in sharing this draft operational plan with you is to ensure we're on the same page when it comes to our agency's priorities and ways of measuring our success. So unless there are questions for me about the process, I'll turn the presentation over to my colleagues who will give you an overview of the operational plan goal by goal.
Thanks, Katie. Any questions for Katie before we continue to hear more? Okay. My first page, are we going to Reed or Brett or Justin or Lauren?
It should be Reed.
Catch. Great.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, Executive Director Gibbs, Director Prenslow, and the rest of the commission. It's good to see everybody virtually. Before I get started with this presentation on Goal 1, I just want to offer a heartfelt thank you to the outgoing commissioners from both myself and my staff of the Aquatic Terrestrial and Natural Resources branch. The encouragement and the way that you've challenged my staff and CPW as a whole has left your mark on it, and it has not gone unnoticed. So thank you very much to all of you. You will be missed. So just for the record, I'm Reed DeWalt, Assistant Director of Aquatics, Terrestrial and Natural Resources. And I will be presenting on Goal 1. And Goal 1 focuses on the conservation of wildlife and habitat to ensure healthy, sustainable populations and ecosystems. You'll see that under our objective to manage sustainable populations, which is Objective A, we continue our work on herd management plan updates, implementation of our CWD response plan, and updating our recreational fish management strategies. The second objective, Objective B, is to preserve and enhance habitat. We will continue tracking our habitat improvement and acres of access, aided by improvements to the real estate database. New additions include implementation of the governor's executive order on big game winterage and migration corridors, as well as supporting collaborations regionally to balance outdoor recreation and conservation interests, which I know the commission is increasingly hearing about. Our work on managing and monitoring species of greatest conservation need, as identified in the third objective, is very similar to our last plan, but with a renewed emphasis on disease monitoring and management programs. Protecting and enhancing water resources is the fourth objective and continues the work from the current plan to manage the agency's water rights. To improve water resource management, we will complete a dashboard tool to coordinate management and maximize use of our water resources statewide. And finally, we'll continue using research to inform wildlife management, as stated in Objective E, including making sure research results are disseminated to field staff to incorporate into operations and clearly communicated with the public. Another aspect of research is our social science research, including doing a new angler satisfaction survey to inform fisheries management and fishing regulations. So that wraps up the presentation I have for goal number 1. I'm happy to answer questions now or to turn it over to Regional Manager Brett Ackerman for goal number 2.
Thanks, Reed. I think we do have a question. Commissioner Garcia.
Good afternoon, Reed. Just a quick question on D. There was under D, the first item, the metric is to file a minimum of 4 water court applications in 21 and 22, 4 and 22 for new CPW water rights. Just curious how you're doing that. Have you found some water you could steal, or how are you applying for water rights where, how?
Being new to the water section, as you know, I may not have the direct answer for you, but I know that we continue to look for opportunities with water users and water managers across the state. I wouldn't put it as opportunity to steal water rights, as you put it, but I do think we continue to look for new opportunities in the portfolio across the state. I can get you a much better answer than that, but I would need the help of the water section to answer that more directly.
No, that's fine. And as to goal 1, very aspirational, very aggressive, a lot of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you. Commissioner McDaniel.
Thank you. Excellent explanation, Reed. The only question I had, and maybe it's more of a comment than a question, is underneath bullet 1 or goal 1, the tying together of the new existing H&Ps, the herd management plans, with that second goal being also led by Brian, and getting to our target management objective by region within the state, which is mentioned there. So it's not just an H&P look, but it's a region look and also a statewide look that we've chatted about multiple times. Still hard to see how each individual H&P or this operational plan drives us, for example, to the goal of 440,000 that we have as a target objective for deer in the state of Colorado. So any insight into that as you do the operational plans would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner McDaniel. I appreciate your comments, and we'll continue to work on that. And also for the rest of the commission, the herd management plan subcommittee did meet this morning for our first time, and that was a topic of our discussion as well. And I think you'll see some good stuff from your fellow commissioners and the rest of that committee as we move forward. So thank you for that comment.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification, Brett, before you go, and maybe Brett, you can answer this. I'm looking at the document, the table summary document that's linked in the agenda. Is that what I should be kind of looking along?
Yes,
Maybe that's a
Madam Chair,
Katie question.
That's the correct document, Madam Chair. Should
Okay.
have the left-hand column of goal followed by the next of objective, then sub-objective, lead, and metric.
Okay, because there's also an item 10 document that's has a lot of kind of underline or top line or something that's a little difficult to follow. So it should be that table that's linked in the agenda. Thank you.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it, Madam Chair. I'm here to talk about goal 2. This again is Brett Ackerman, Southeast Regional Manager. And this is like all of our goals, a great goal. Manage state parks for world-class recreation. I'd like to just say done, but we can't always just count on the amazing resources that we have in Colorado. We also have to manage them. And so to Commissioner Adams' point of being intentional, I appreciate the objectives that we're putting here under goal number 2, focused on managing state parks for world-class outdoor recreation. And one piece of that is definitely managing our facilities and amenities, which you'll see in that table that Madam Chair referenced under Objective A. And we need to monitor their status and incorporate the needed updates into an actual capital plan so that we're planning updates, at all times and don't have a static capital plan, but have a dynamic plan that addresses these updates on a rotational basis as things come up. We're also doing our resource management through weed surveys, natural and cultural resource inventories, and resource stewardship plans. And one new addition to this plan, Plan 3, as Katie put it, is improving our infrastructure asset inventory. So more data, more good, if it's good data. Our second objective B, is about exploring opportunities for new or expanded state parks. And, at a time when we talk about difficult finances, that's a hard thing to talk about, but we're also talking about amazing visitation and the need for continued recreational opportunities that are concerted here in Colorado. Certainly it's been demonstrated. So this remains a high objective, and it's and it's also a goal under the Future Generations Act. So here we do talk more about Fisher's Peak, including completion of the master planning process and opening limited trail access. And we also want a pilot test applying the criteria developed last year to assess properties as possible new or expanded parks. Another objective is to market the special qualities of each of our state parks under Objective C, which also ties to Goal 6, which we'll talk about later, connecting people to the outdoors. We specifically call out here in Goal 2 our work at the Cameo Shooting Sports, as Regional Manager Romatsky mentioned earlier, and elevating the profile of that facility by hosting national shooting events there. Our final objective under this goal focuses on technology. That's Objective D. And in this plan, we want to use technology to improve counting park visitors. This is something that we try very hard to keep a close eye on. And having accurate visitation counts is important for park operations, for budgeting, for communicating, for a variety of reasons. We need to know how many people are attending, when they're attending, and be able to track them. Helps us also communicate about the economic benefits of state park visitation, as we've alluded to several times today. So in a very, very small nutshell, that's goal number 2, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Brett. Commissioner Garcia.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Brett. I don't see anywhere, maybe it's just explicit, maybe it's just built in, but I don't see anywhere in goal number 2, specifically the B, which is exploring new real estate opportunities and potentially new parks, coordination with GOCO. I don't see it mentioned anywhere, and I again assume or hope that that's just automatic or explicit in what you're doing.
I mean, it certainly is. Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. It certainly is that we, we do many things hand in hand with GOCO, and it does seem like an appropriate place to mention them there as well. Katie Lanter may be able to answer if we call out GOCO somewhere else in the plan, but you're right that they're not called out in goal number 2.
This is Katie Lanter, Policy and Planning Supervisor. I don't believe GOCO is explicitly called out anywhere within the operational plan, but as Brett mentioned, I think that's something that could be appropriate here under goal 2.
Thank you. As a
Thank you.
GOCO board member, I can tell you that obviously Carrie and I want to be part of that. So anything that we can do to help, just give us a shout.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Commissioner, Commissioner, I may have cut out when I called your name. Sorry.
No problem, no problem, Chairwoman. Excuse me. I missed my opportunity to talk about Goal 1. Actually, I just want to give some general comments around this operational plan conceptually and structurally. So in my opening, I talked about how important relationship building is across our constituent group and stakeholder group. And I think one of the issues that have arisen both through COVID and the racial injustice has been the lack of transparency and accountability throughout our governmental structure. And so when I came in to CPW last year on the commission and saw a strategic plan that was not measurable, time bound, going against, the evidence base around strategic planning. I made inquiries and I really want to thank Katie Lanter for her support and guidance in allowing me under the hood, if you will, with the operational plan where there are measures and metrics. However, those measures and metrics, are not shared on an ongoing basis with the public. And it was not really meant to be a public facing document. It's an action plan. And so I'm wondering how we can ensure stakeholder engagement and feedback loops throughout the year. And even in a campaign, a public campaign, when I talk to constituents in the Front Range and elsewhere, no one has any idea. And I asked them about CPW and what their goals are and where their priorities are. They have no idea. And so we really have a rich opportunity to build education here. But again, more so to the point of accountability. Now, specific Goal 1, again, the issue with this being an operational plan versus a strategic plan with measurable outcomes that are public and time bound. I talked a lot in my introduction about how important it was that we, and the DNR goal around diversifying our staffing and the volunteers and the others that we work in. And I didn't see anything around, engaging, working with, partnering with, hiring Black, Indigenous, Asian, Asian Pacific Islander, Latino, Latinx folks as well. So again, I noticed there's a really rich gender balance in our staffing at that level and in that group. But I would be remiss if I did not mention the lack of racial and ethnic diversity. And when we don't have that, it's not just for optics. There, like I said, with the birders, there is, each of us bring a unique expertise and experience to the table. And when we don't have those experience on the table, we're missing out, and so again, I urge us to really think about how we can, A, hold ourselves publicly accountable to our constituents and to the public and our visitors, as well as internally to the DNR goals around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Commissioner Adams, I think you're, pardon me, just teeing up. She's going to talk about Goal 5, which I think addresses a lot of that, right, at least from what I can tell.
I don't want to see it just in Goal 5 though, but I appreciate it. It should be reflected in every single goal that we have, right? Hey, sorry, I just saw him. And so, again, it is, again, coming from my own background of strategic planning with agencies across the country, large ones, even larger than this one, that piece is critical, right? And so, and what we measure matters. And if I don't see it reflected in Goal A and I got to go all the way to the last goal, then it's not a priority, right? And so how do we support our agency in making sure that they can really understand. I don't see anything around culturally responsive practice. I don't see anything around linguistic practice. I don't see anything, again, I think that we have a rich opportunity to lead here and build on those strengths. So again, I'm not gonna do a whole lot on this because it's already coming to the end and we have a rich opportunity ahead, and that's really where I'm looking. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Justin, I think you are up next. Is that right?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you.
Great.
Good to see you all again. My name is Justin Rutter. I'm the Assistant Director for Financial Services and Capital Development. I'm here to address Goal 3, which involves achieving and maintaining financial sustainability. And we really view this through 3 different lenses: identifying new money, maintaining our existing sources of funding, and then ensuring that we deploy those resources responsibly. Identifying new and potential resources is Objective A, but it's also a goal of the Future Generations Act, and sustainable funding is one of the governor's wildly important goals. So this kind of leads off the financial sustainability section. Under the current operational plan, we completed a study with Meridian looking at the opportunities and challenges of various new funding streams. This report also suggested a need to increase the relevancy of CPW as a precursor to securing that new funding. If we aren't relevant to people, they won't want to support our requests or our financial sustainability long-term. So to that end, we then hired the marketing firm Cactus to examine what people know about CPW. They are testing marketing strategies and developing an engagement plan to leverage that messaging to build support for new funding. Here in this new operational plan, our next step will be the implementation of that engagement plan. Also under this Objective A, we're looking at expanding existing funding sources by enhancing our retail program and by focusing on increasing donations and corporate sponsorships. But as mentioned earlier, at the same time, we want to make sure that we maintain our existing sources of funding, which is Objective B. To that end, we will identify our top 3 revenue sources and establish a measure for their health to improve monitoring of these funding streams. I think health is kind of a strange word to show up in the financial section of our strategic plan, and I think it was rather intentional on our part to choose that. Some of the conversations we've been having over the past few months kind of reflect that. Lottery is a very important funding stream. It's one of our current funding streams, but we have, as you've seen from my kind of analysis of jackpot analysis or jackpot sizes, we didn't have a good monitoring system in place that would give us a green light, yellow light, red light prior to taking a closer look of the health of that funding stream. So we want to make sure that those funding streams that are most central to our business, we are keeping a close eye on, and we have regular updates on their health. And I can envision this being kind of a red light, green light in commission reports going forward: red light, yellow light, green light. But we also want to take steps to improve the oversight of our current revenue streams to ensure that all funding is being received and used by CPW. I think over the past years, we've had a number of conversations about GOCO throughput, and that's something that my section's been working on improving over the past couple of years. So we'd like to take some of the lessons we've learned, and I think if you think about the investment plans that we've proposed lately, as far as going to one capital grant instead of having individual capital grants for each of our projects, we've also instituted some internal monitoring. It's hard for you to see that ensures that our programs are using the operating dollars for GOCO first before we move to other funding sources. We want to take those lessons learned and move them to some of the other funding sources that we have. And our last objective looks at the responsible deployment of our financial and workforce resources. Encompassed in one of the sub-objectives here is continue reporting on Future Generations Act. Seems simple to continue reporting, but really the outcome is that we made a number of promises to the legislature and to the public through the Future Generations Act. And we want to ensure that we are prioritizing our resources to meet those funding needs. Also want to understand, an additional sub-objective here is making sure that staff better understand the overall agency finances. Since I've started here, I've reached out to staff on a number of occasions, attended a number of meetings, and I always, at least once a year, I get the question, what happens to our money if we don't spend it? I heard it goes to the general fund. That is incorrect. We retain our funds, and that's a failing on my part for not educating staff. As we've seen through the outreach during the Future Generations Act, our staff can be amazing advocates for us. They were armed with a great deal of information on why we needed the Future Generations Act, and they held meetings, they educated the public they ran into, and they are such a resource for this relevancy and sustainability that is not being properly utilized when they don't fully understand the finances themselves. So we wanted to call that out in this plan and make sure that our staff are fully educated and they can be our advocates educating others. Is there any other question, or are there any questions or any other topics you'd like me to discuss under Goal 3 before I hand it over to Lauren Truitt?
Commissioner Garcia. Commissioner Garcia, did my internet cut out again?
It did, yeah. So Justin, what was the great report that we had done, the study on all of this revenue raising? Skipping my mind right now.
Yeah, we completed the Meridian report, which examined another.
And so I hope we're using that. But more importantly, I don't see here, and maybe would be good to have some board involvement other than just presenting it to us at these board meetings. I know there are a lot of good ideas that I've heard coming from other commissioners. So maybe I say board, I mean commission. Some areas here that would be prime for commissioner involvement. I know we're doing a committee on herd management. This seems equally, if not more important at this time. So maybe we could, is it possible to somehow involve the commission more hands-on with this?
Certainly. And are you thinking of the kind of new revenue streams? And I mean, is it the entire goal or the entire goal 3, or are you thinking more of it?
No, I don't want to get in the way of the work you do so well. No, it's more of when you're looking at some of these ideas, the increased corporate sponsorship and those sort of things. And some of the other things that we've talked about with different fees for other users and those sorts of things.
Yeah, I think we can certainly find a way to get the commission involved and leverage all of your various experiences on ways we could improve our financial sustainability. So let's get through seeing what Cactus Relevancy Study has to say. And then I will try to get something going together with the commission to kind of have a workshop or a working group to address that.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I wanted to also echo Commissioner Garcia's point. I think there are, the commission is a resource when we're looking at potential new funding sources, as well as likely looking at increasing the relevancy of the role of CPW within everyday citizens' lives and being able to make those connections real through a financial investment vehicle. Also, I wanted to ask, where we do have existing sources of funding that are relatively stable or sustainable, do we have actual longer term sort of development or spending strategies? When it comes to GOCO, are we looking at a 5-year or 10-year basis of this is the average of, or this is the expectation of average? These are where we're going to be able to look for these 5 years. That this is where the money will be invested in terms of capital projects or whatever else that there may be. Just being able to have a more complete picture of where we believe that the money needs to be invested so that we can identify where those shortcomings are and informing that relevancy and as well as additional financial sustainability opportunities. Because to my mind, I participated in the Meridian study and development of that. It was one where we developed ideas for creating new revenue. We didn't necessarily have the opportunity of identifying this is what we want additional revenue for. This is where we want to invest for a long-term sustainability of the agency. And to me, that isn't just part of the story of telling it to, Coloradans. It's also to be able to identify how you implement things through an operational plan, working towards particular goals. So thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner Schaefer. Good points. Lauren, do you want to take us in for the to the home plate here?
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Executive Director Gibbs, Director Prenslow, Commissioners. I'm Lauren Truitt. I'm the Assistant Director for Information and Education. Before I dive into goal number 4 and number 5, I'd like to echo my colleagues' statements on our outgoing commissioners. I just want to thank each of you for your leadership, your dedication to this agency and the resources of Colorado, and most importantly, your friendship. You guys will certainly be missed. I look forward to when we can have a celebration in your honor and the honor of the rest of the commission. As I go through this, I want to hear and comment on Commissioner Adams' comment on making sure that these goals are intertwined and woven through each of our objectives. I understand the actual benchmarks and the measuring has to be housed somewhere, but I think that it's really important that we do look at our goals holistically and that all 6 of these build off of one another. Goal 4 really focuses on maintaining a dedicated workforce and a volunteer program that is so critical to the operations of our agency. Part of that is really capitalizing on the knowledge and experience of our personnel, hearing from employees on what's going well, areas that we can improve upon, using their knowledge, really embodying what their experiences are to build a better workforce is what Goal 4 really focuses on. And then we want to identify key performance indicators and incorporate those into our employee survey so that we can measure where we are making improvements, where we're maintaining good work, and areas that we can address. We also want to recruit and develop a highly qualified and diverse workforce. This is also a really important goal in our Future Generations Act and our work with the Department of Natural Resources on our Equity, Diversity, and Inclusivity Working Group. It centers in on looking at our recruitment efforts, how we're writing our position descriptions, how we're training our hiring managers to look at their candidates and their description, their positions in broader ways. We're looking at reimagining our programs. Director Prenslow and Lynn Steckedy, as well as a lot of our leadership, has been engaged in conversations on paid apprenticeships, restructuring our current youth and internship program, known as our YIP program, and how we use those internships to create job pathways for people into our agency. We're reimagining and expanding mentorship within the agency, challenging how we are bringing staff in and how we are bringing them into the CPW culture, as well as expanding our efforts with junior colleges, and universities through programming. You know, our ultimate goal is to create succinct pathways that build off of each other. We have robust programming in 4th grade. How do we create programming in high school? How do we expand our capacity to meet more people, introduce them to careers in the natural resources? Our employee engagement survey also provides us with great insight into the health of our organization. I just started working with Dr. Kortuch and my team on really reimagining our engagement survey so that we can hone in on very specific deliverables and work with the leadership team to identify areas to improve, areas to build off of. So I'm really excited about this area of the operational plan and the prospect of moving forward and how we can be very intentional on what we're training on and how we are supporting our staff. In addition to our paid FTE and our part-time staff, our volunteer program is so important to the operation of our agency, and they play a critical role in helping us accomplish our mission. We always want to attract new volunteers, but more importantly, we need to expand our efforts to attract inspired and diverse volunteers who are committed to the conservation and promotion of education and outdoor recreation in Colorado. So we will continue through this plan and our efforts. We'll continue to strive to learn and grow, improving our volunteer management practices, our engagement strategies, and the satisfaction of both staff and volunteers with the experiences that they're getting through this program. We also want to really tap into our partner network. We have a lot of friends across the state that do amazing work. How do we attract and grow with our partners and make sure that we're cultivating their needs and their capacity as well as our own to really tackle the biggest issues that are in front of us that none of us can do alone. So I'll stop there on goal 4, open it up to any questions before I dive into goal number 5.
Thanks, Lauren. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you so much, Lauren, for that wonderful overview. I know, and I have talked with you about the rich work that you are and meaningful work that you and your team have been doing around these issues. Having said that, one thing I noticed again is we talk about metrics, but a lot of the metrics are actually outputs and not outcomes. They're not impact measures, right? And so, for example, if we're talking about diversifying the workforce, I don't see any measures around that. I just see a goal, an interest, but I don't see also, what do we mean by diversify? In what way? What is the data telling us? Again, I would love if there was more baseline data in these reports, right? Because it lets me know, and I would love to see year end, like, you know, the last 3 years usually is a nice trend line so that we can really see, and again, I work at the American Institutes for Research. This is what we do, right? And it's very difficult as a commissioner to make those informed decisions because you know the data is there's so much information, and so that's where we're really looking to staff to help us to make those data informed decisions. And this chart, this table is a great starting point, but having those additional data points, 3 years of data points, so we can see change over time, I would say across all of the goals, as well as some actual impact measures, particularly around these DEI works. And that's where it goes back to what I said in that slide around how does the public hold CPW accountable? How does the DNR hold CPW accountable to the DEI goals, right? The other thing that I want to just bring up is mid-career pathways. During Black History Month, I shared a resource, an article around Black environmentalists, naturalists, scientists, biologists. And that's just one. You know, I'm very close to the folks at Latinos Outdoors, Asians Outdoors, Native Women's Wilderness, Natives Outdoors. And many of the members have expertise in these areas. And so, you know, although I appreciate a focus on entry points at the more early career phase, I'm wondering what we're doing around the fact that there are people that have these expertise, and yet I don't see them reflected in our staff. And then lastly, I want to talk about bringing these folks into CPW culture. When we are talking about being inclusive, you're inviting somebody to the table, and that's wonderful. But that also means you're not asking them to assimilate into what exists. But now when you bring somebody else in, it requires us to revisit everything that we do. And it's not, I mean, again, I'm just offering that to say, and all of this is in the stamped book around racism, anti-racism, et cetera. But again, this expectation, it talks a lot about the difference between assimilation and real authentic engagement. And that's really where we want to go. And just quickly, one example I like to use with that is, you know, if you invite a vegan to the table to dinner, you better make sure you have vegan options. You don't just say, hey, hope you got his meat. So that's the culture that we have here. You know, you make those accommodations, you extend that invitation, and then, you know, you expand and deepen that environment so that it's more welcoming. Another issue that we need to take a very close eye on is retention. There has been significant evidence that suggests that when we diversify staff, particularly around race and ethnicity, as well as LGBTQAI+ status, because the culture that they are brought into is reluctant to change, there's higher turnover rates. And so we want to really make sure that we are both doing things that are diversifying our pipeline, but also preparing our agency to be more culturally and linguistically competent, so that when those folks get here, like myself, I got here and I'm confronted with news jokes, race jokes, I'm called a racist. I mean, these are things that are not welcoming, right? But this is the work. This is what happens when you invite people in who have been historically marginalized. And that leads me to my very last question, which is, I don't see anything in here around building cultural competence and linguistic competence. You get what you pay for. And so I'm wondering, how are we supporting our current staff at all levels around cultural and linguistic competence, around implicit bias, around issues of power and privilege, around white privilege, around how we can really be good stewards to every single person that enters our parks. And I'm also talking about those people with disabilities and other special needs. So again, I'm not just talking about Black people. I'm talking about every single Coloradan, as well as the many visitors, the millions of visitors that come in to this beautiful state. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments and the feedback, as well as the question, and particularly your last one, which, when you had asked Brett about, our intentional use of the programs that we have a very robust internal language program. We do invest in it's not as robust as it could be, but we do invest in Rosetta Stone and making opportunities available. There is a couple-month wait list on the licenses that we do have for those. But I think Brett said it correctly, is, do we do it with as much intention as we can? And I would say no. Tracy Grip worked really hard on our connections with interpretive staff and in the ASL community to be able to offer services. We have robust relationships across the board that we can have interpreters at any one of our programs, any one of our commission meetings, for any person that would like to participate. But we need to do a better job making those services available and known to our customers. And so I do have a note for our employee or our employee development section in my communication team of how do we make sure people know we have those services available, because it doesn't matter what kind of programming, we can provide it.
Right. And you brought up a great point there, and that's the difference between access and meaningful participation. You can have, we have all of this rich resources, but nobody knows about it.
Right.
Right. And that's, again, one of those equitable. So that's really wonderful to hear. And again, these are not criticism. These are opportunities to grow. I don't know. I know that you know that because we know each other. I'm just saying for the other people who don't know that I know you and we talk. Is that these are invitations, right? And again, I'm coming in and I'm saying AIR, not AIR, excuse me, that's where I work. But DNR and CPW are certainly ahead of the curve in many areas, and everything I'm bringing to the table is opportunities for us to continue to build on that strength and model to all of these other states that apparently are really looking to Colorado as a leader in this work. So again, the ripple effects of what we do here is quite extensive. So and I don't have to tell you all that. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. We also have a question from Commissioner McDaniel.
I just want to follow up on Taisha's comment. I was thinking about that while she was speaking as well, is a lot of the measures, and I know this is kind of new and it's an operational plan, but really do lean themselves to an activity measure versus a quality measure. And so I think when you look at an operational plan like this, Lauren and Katie and all, it does need to be a mix of both, perhaps in every bullet. I mean, saying we want to, conserve, 800 more acres is both an activity, and 800 acres is we got 600 acres. We've kind of got a measure of our quality. One can be both. Where you have, for example, creating and piloting an internship program with mentorship, that's an activity. If you also measured how many folks got promoted that entered that program, that would be a measure of quality. So maybe just think about that in the future, as Taisha says, an opportunity to, measure both your success and the quality of what you're doing, as well as completing the activity that you believe we need to align with the strategic goal. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Commissioner McDaniel. Thank you. And it is something that Dr. Quartuch and myself are continuing to look at, is how we can dig into the data to make sure that we are actually providing true outputs. It's not an area that we have actually dug into in previous operational plans on this particular effort. So I anticipate some really good dialogue to come out of this, and some really good information that we can demonstrate, or at least identify a baseline to go from.
And if I may, this is Katie Lanter. I was just going to add on the comments around the metrics and the tracking. We certainly do, encourage SMART metrics, so ones that are measurable, achievable, time bound, and there's always room for improvement. So I appreciate the feedback there, and I think we will continue to look for opportunities to make those, as measurable as possible. And just for the reporting, I mean, this operational plan 3 sets out what we intend to do over the next 2 years, what we intend to track, and the commission in November will receive the report in terms of what we did on operational plan 2, the one that's wrapping up just now. So we are trying to be able to show our progress over that 2-year period, what we achieved, the movement from where we started to where we ended up. So let us know if we achieve that when you hear from us in November. But we this is the first time we're actually making this operational plan public, so this is a new learning process for us too. But we appreciate the opportunity to get input, and we are trying to be really transparent at all these steps, both the setting of the plan and the reporting of the plan, which will come in November.
Yeah, one other comment I'd follow up, Katie, Commissioner McDaniel again, is the flip side of that, you be careful you don't try to, as we used to call it at work, boil the ocean. So if you want to have a plan that's transparent and that's something that we can communicate, for example, to the public, it's got to be very specific goals and just a handful of them. An operational plan like this with all these different aspects is really something I would say is impossible to communicate to the public. There's too many goals because it is an operational plan. What you try to communicate to the public is a strategic plan, and then some specific quality measures that you're trying to measure. Example would be the governor's wildly important goals and the level of which they're at. And that's the kind of thing you could communicate to what I'll call our constituency or customer base is. So that's where you just have to be careful. Again, you've got so many things here. Don't, again, as I call it, boil the ocean and try to communicate them all. But pick the ones that are really make a difference in achieving our strategic plan.
Sure, I appreciate the Katie Lanter again, and that's pretty much why I had in the past pushed back against sharing the operational plan publicly. I thought it was an overwhelming amount of detail for the public to see, that it was better what we report in November to see just the goals and kind of are we on track, where are we going, just the sub-objective level, not the metrics themselves. And so I guess, yeah, again, this is a test to see, is there an appetite for this level of detail or not? And we're very involved with the wildly important goals, both the drafting of those and then the implementation of those. So we're contributing to that reporting too. I feel like these days my job is pretty much exclusively reporting. So if we can dial it back, I'm okay with that too. But thank you for the comments on what would be most helpful from the commission's perspective.
Yeah, and it's a different audience. Obviously, Commissioner McDaniel again. Me as an audience, I like the level of detail you're bringing forward here for us to look at activities and success and quality, connecting it to how we would share with members of the public on a very broad scale is a different question. But for example, adding a state park is different than adding acreage. But we could communicate a couple of different items when it comes to adding to increase public access. Which is more of the strategic goal we're trying to do versus, all the specific things we were trying to do in the parks or wildlife areas. I'm babbling on here, Katie. I think you get it.
And in the interest of time, oh, I see Commissioner Adams took your hand down. Okay, Lauren, do you want to, thank you. Continue on. Thanks so much. I do think this is great discussion.
Assistant Director Lauren True again, diving into goal number 5. I look at this goal as the success indicator of the other 5 goals. If we are doing our job in accomplishing our goals and the other 5 goals outlined in the strategic plan, the increase of trust and awareness in our agency will be evident in a lot of different ways. This is one that I know it needs to live somewhere in a metric form, but is woven into all of the work CPW staff does. So goal 5 is increasing trust and awareness for our agency. We want people to identify and understand the mission that we are here to provide to Colorado, as well as our key programs. Another really important piece of the agency is how we're funded. That it's still an area of confusion, and so we always look for creative ways and new ways to help the public understand how we are funded and the amount of work that we do across Colorado. Within this operational plan, we'll continue working on our efforts of creating a common voice across CPW and how we talk about our work and how we talk about what we do, and most importantly, why we do it. A big portion of our interaction with the public is through the media and our social media channels and communication mediums. So one of the areas that we hope to continue expanding on is what we call media kits. We cover really complex topics, as you guys are well aware. The media has, 30 to 45 seconds, a minute if they're lucky to convey those to the public. So we are trying to figure out creative ways to get that information to the media and to our partners in a way that is easy for them to distill down and communicate out. With the launch of our iPause system, we have an incredible amount of information that is coming in about our business and how people interact with us as an agency. But it also comes with a level of care and confidentiality and trust of that data. And so we've worked really hard on creating processes of how we use that information and how staff can access that information. We continue to prioritize and refine that process to optimize the information that's available for decision making without hurting that trust of our customer. We are also working on building stakeholder and public involvement, and this goes into our WIG number 4, our work with DNR through our partners programs, through our staff in the field, and making sure that we're incorporating the voices of our local community in the decision-making process, that they understand and have access to the tools and the programs that we have available. A big part of that is also our website, and making sure that our website meets the needs of the public that we're trying to communicate with. And so unfortunately, with the current economic situation, we had to pull our website redesign project off of our request to the JBC and the Joint Technology Committee. But it is still a major priority for us as a leadership team and as an agency. And so we are looking at different funding mechanisms to make sure that we can produce a state-of-the-art website that really reflects the level of work we produce for Colorado. Commissioner Adams, this also does go into that accessibility of information. What we've built into this website redesign process is the ability to do multilingual translation, making sure that we're gold standard or at least AA ADA compliant. We want to make sure that our website reflects the integrity that the agency works with, but still is accessible to all people within Colorado and across the globe that interacts with us. And finally, we want to increase public awareness about the importance of wildlife management. It is a huge foundation of the fabric of Colorado, and through the Future Generations Act, we increased our funding for the Wildlife Council and their efforts in educating the general public on the importance of hunting and fishing and wildlife management here in Colorado. And it is part of this operational goal. We are looking at making sure that council's efforts are maximized, that we're reaching new audiences with messages that make sense and resonate to them. The council has done a tremendous amount of research and message testing to make sure that these are things that resonate outside of our world of conservation and the things that we regularly talk about. We want to make sure that we're talking about things that are important to the public. So again, I'll open it up for any questions on goal number 5 before handing it back to Brett for goal number 6.
Commissioner Garcia.
Lauren, and maybe Brett. So I see 5 and 6 as all one big package. And Connect to Colorado is obviously based on awareness and trust. I'm going to make one last pitch for working with GOCO. We had a GOCO board meeting this morning, and we were talking about Generation Wild. We spend millions of dollars on Generation Wild, and the purpose of Generation Wild is to drive children to our outdoors. And so the question was asked this morning during the GOCO board meeting, are you people working with CPW? Because this seems to be something that would really fit into what they're trying to do. And so again, it's another one where I don't see GOCO mentioned here. And I would really hope that we aren't sort of duplicating efforts. And certainly one of our biggest partners, and GOCO, CPW is GOCO's biggest partner. That we're utilizing all of the efforts that they are putting forth in driving not only children outdoors, but people in general.
I appreciate the comment, Commissioner Garcia. And GOCO is one of our most trusted and most worked with partners. I do understand where you're saying it's remiss in our goals to work with the team over there. I think there's always opportunity to expand. We're constantly, at least through our education programming in particular, is looking at how we better connect our efforts with their Generation Wild, their Inspire communities, making sure that our messaging, I know our marketing teams meet regularly, but I do see where we could build in goals that specifically outline GOCO, but their efforts and our partnership are intertwined in these efforts.
Yeah, I would like to see it actually built in if that's possible. Thank you.
And we do, Commissioner Adams, I do see a question from you. Do you want to speak now, or should we get through, can we get through Brett's presentation?
Fine.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren. Brett, if you don't mind finishing us up, and then Commissioner Adams after that.
Thank you. I sure will. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I appreciate Commissioner Garcia's comments as well. I think it's very important. I mean, we make mistakes, and sometimes we leave things out that we should put in, and all of these perspectives are very important that we get into our plan. And case in point, we announced Fisher's Peak recently, and I failed to, I mentioned all of the partners and failed to mention the great work of the Habitat Stamp Committee and the input by sportsmen, sportswomen of purchasing nearly a third of that property. Such an important part, and if you're not thinking more globally, it's easy to leave things out and not give credit where credit's due. And so we appreciate the comments and the inclusive thought process that goes into them. I'll go through goal 6 very quickly, but I would agree with Commissioner Garcia. This is actually an all-encompassing goal, in my opinion. This is something that we try to do and work into everything that we do. And so it's certainly one of the most important things we do, and what we exist for is to connect people to Colorado's outdoors. Part of this is through broadening opportunities, as you see in Objective A, which is also a goal in the Future Generations Act. And our education programs are one way we help people access the outdoors through giving them necessary skills. In this plan, we want to get a better handle on participation in our education programs, and we want to hope to seek to at least maintain, but hopefully increase participation in outdoor education. Trails are another important key component of access, and under this plan, we will increase funding for trail maintenance and complete our planning trails with Wildlife in Mind Handbook to inform responsible trail construction and management by land managers across the state. And as part of this objective, we'll also continue the work we've done under the governor's wing to expand public access to the public access program, as Director Prenslow mentioned in his comments earlier, and again, the great work done by the Colorado Habitat Stamp Committee. Under Objective B, connecting people to outdoors also requires proper facilities and infrastructure. I talked about this earlier. This plan shows and continues our work on dam maintenance and hatchery modernization, both very big capital projects here in the state, and also aligned with the Future Generations Act. And you'll see a new addition here to inspect all of our building components, like I mentioned earlier. On the technology side of connecting, we'll implement at least one electronic pass, as we've talked about a number of times, and one electronic license by June of 2022. And we'll also continue improving the IPAWS interface and direct more registration renewals online hopefully making technological strides with our operations will also involve certainly infrastructure upgrades. The next objective stated in the strategic plan is to foster partnerships to enhance recreation opportunities. In this new plan, we think the partnership should also enhance conservation of natural resources. And again, this gets at the balance between outdoor recreation opportunity and resource conservation. We'll continue to use the Partners Conference, which has been wildly successful in my opinion, and Colorado Outdoor Partnerships as ways to build these bridges. And you've heard Director Prenslow talk a lot about the need to balance recreation with conservation, and under this operational goal, we intend to move forward and really embrace that. Promoting the value of CPW's mission and services is another objective, and objective D, we see this as tying closely to the implementation of the marketing plan. And we want to continue growing our social media engagement and develop metrics for measuring the effectiveness of our marketing. We've made great strides. We've done great things, but boy, we have a long ways to go here as well. And the final goal, 6, objective as stated in the strategic plan, is to become familiar with the needs, interests, and expectations of residents and visitors who are new to outdoor recreation. If I had a favorite objective, this might be it. You know, we need to listen, we need to hear, and we need to take action, as we've heard a number of times today. So similarly, we want to expand this goal to encompass conservation as well. Part of this will be establishing a baseline for participant satisfaction in our educational programs and trying to improve satisfaction. We also want to make sure people are recreating safely, and we'll step up our efforts to, that are related to safety compliance. So again, very, very quick, lots of thought, lots of staff time, lots of work, and lots of depth in each of these very short bullet points. But that's the focus of goal number 6.
Thank you, Brett. Commissioner Adams.
Thank you very much for that. That was very helpful. And this is just an overall comment about any of our parks and wildlife programs. I'm not clear how in the implementation plan, how we are addressing the issues around the need to revisit those programs and curriculums to ensure that they are culturally and linguistically responsive and appropriate and inclusive of all Coloradan history. For example, even our hunter safety, all of the history that is provided is primarily settler history. And so, it's not, again, how do we hold ourselves accountable to being diverse, inclusive, and equitable? And I just don't see that in this draft plan. And so I appreciate Katie Lanter and the team for allowing us to see this depth. I agree with Commissioner Daniels that this depth is appropriate grain size for commissioners. And I agree that an amended grain size that's much smaller and more accessible, more connected to our strategic plan that hopefully will become measurable one day, would be more appropriate down the line. So, but again, I would be remiss if I did not say that the current implementation plan is not, has a growth opportunity around being explicit around these particular gaps that we're seeing. I don't see anything around the overrepresentation or underrepresentation of staff, of leadership. And when we talk about public trust, if I look, and I look, I don't throw around the word love very often, but I really do have come to love a lot, members of this team. I appreciate and I respect everyone for the efforts and expertise and skill sets that they bring. And there is currently no Black, Indigenous, Latino, Latinx, Latine that I'm aware of, Asian Pacific Islander on the leadership team. And so, again, when I look at any solidarity letter that has come out around Black Lives Matter, my first thing to do is look at their board and their leadership team, because that lets me know how serious they are taking this. It is not enough. It is not meaningfully engaged. It is not sufficient meaningful engagement to only get those diverse voices through surveys and interviews. Having people at every decision-making table is what equity actually would look like. And so, again, I'm really hoping that we can take a risk around being explicit. Also, I want to just make a comment, and I was talking with a few folks this week, so you may have heard me say this, but I was struck by Nelson Mandela's, or rather, I was reminded about Nelson Mandela's comment back in the day around judge me not by my success, judge me by how many times I have fallen and got back up again. That is how I live my life. I am not asking for perfection. I'm not expecting for perfection. It is progress over perfection. And so there will be bumps. We will be, and that's how we know we're doing the work. So thank you for your willingness to take on this, these observations and these wonderings. And I look forward to continuing to be a thought partner. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners, for all the attention on the strategic plan. And thank you to all the staff and all the hard work. I know this operational plan has taken a lot of time, and there's a lot in it. So really appreciate all of the work, the presentation, your openness to our feedback, and your inclusion of the commission in these efforts. So thank you. Okay, with that, anything additional, Katie, Lauren, Brett? Okay. With that, I'd like to adjourn, and we're going to start with Emily Orbanek tomorrow morning, and then we'll jump into the herd management plans. One reminder, it is a different link tomorrow, so just make sure you scroll down. I missed that last time, so use the second link. All right. Thanks, everyone. See you tomorrow.
Thank you.